We're at the Steel Guard training ground. The patriarch's youngest son has completed, for the first time, the training Raphael gave him. The captain is baffled. This is the same kid who used to fake injuries to skip warm-ups. The spoiled brat, the family's embarrassment. So when he picks up a sword and takes his stance, the knights can barely hold back their laughter. But he's not the same guy anymore. The captain tells the knight to take it easy and use only his left hand. No mana either, because surely the young master can't handle a real fight. Aaron's pride takes a hit, so he tells the knight to come at him with full strength. Then he shouts, "Begin," and lunges forward. His first strike is so fast it nearly takes the knight's head off. The onlookers are completely baffled by the young master's performance. Fly barely blocks and is forced backward, then starts to panic. This is supposed to be the pampered rich kid, so why is Fly the one getting overwhelmed? An explosion of aura erupts in the middle of the arena, sending Fly crashing to the ground. Aaron simply stands there and asks if he won. The entire training ground, laughing just moments ago, falls dead silent. Everyone wonders how this is even possible. In this life, this boy has vowed to be merciless, because his past life was anything but sunshine and bitches. First, he had absolutely no talent. Even though his grandfather and father were exceptional knights, he could only reach 3rd class. So everyone mocked him, and honestly, they had good reason, because he truly was a useless, incompetent rat. Second, to make matters even worse, the only valuable thing he possessed was the interdimensional transaction book. What it does is pretty self-explanatory, but I'll explain the details later. When he decided to use it to become a good lord, since he was a trash knight, his bastard brother sent goons to kill him and steal the book. But one of the few items he'd bought through the book was the bookmark of wishes. Unfortunately, the killers kept healing him with potions, while torturing him for hours, all because those bastards ordered them to make sure the boy suffered as much as possible. But when everything finally faded to black, the bookmark activated, and he woke up in the past. At first, he was confused. He saw his old room and his old maid, but none of that mattered. What mattered was that his eyes were glowing with a strange blue fire, and somehow he could now see the interdimensional trading book without the physical book. A notification appears, asking whether he wants to continue logging in. But there's only a confirm button with no cancel option. He's wondering why there's no way out, but presses it anyway. System loads, displaying his information, and he notices that he somehow has 10 coins. He wonders if they carried over from his past life account, but that makes no sense since his level didn't transfer. He grabs his chin like a detective, wondering if the coins were issued randomly, then decides whatever, let's test it out. Our boy opens a chest full of coins, thinking, thank God, everything's here this time. Aaron stares at the chest, promising himself he won't be played for a fool again, and will spend everything wisely. He opens the interdimensional trading system and starts checking the exchange rates. The book summons a set of scales. Coins appear, and a notification says he now has 30 coins. Aaron is shocked, because he expected around 25, and that's when the true value of gold finally clicks. He figures out the system. Market prices fluctuate, and goods hold different values in each world, so the obvious move is to buy low and sell high. But the exchange isn't stupid either. It charges taxes and commissions, and the lower your transaction level, the more restrictions you face. Aaron realizes he's trapped in a catch-22. To raise his level, he needs results. But to get results, he needs a higher level. And finding decent products at level 0 is nearly impossible. Then a notification from a seller named Hearthstone pops up, advertising mana stones, and Aaron notices the guy's name is glowing red. He opens the seller's profile thinking, wait, I've used this system for 3 years, and I've never seen warnings like this before. Hearthstone is trying to sell him mana stones, claiming his prices match the market. and that others charge even more. But another information window reveals that the scammer wants twice the actual market price. Aaron starts grinning, thinking, so you really tried selling stones at that ridiculous price? What a nasty swindler. They argue in the chat, with Aaron threatening to report him to the exchange, and Hearthstone starts panicking because the information window reveals he uses slave labor in his mines and will do anything for profit. After Aaron threatens to file a complaint, the guy immediately folds and offers half price, and our boy considers haggling even further, but decides to accept the deal. The transaction goes through, but only 22. 5 coins are deducted instead of 25, leaving Aaron completely confused until he notices a cashback effect. Now he's even more surprised, standing there wondering, am I a VIP now? But he shakes his head, since becoming a VIP is incredibly difficult, so there's no way. Then he turns his attention to the mana stones. He tests them and confirms they're legitimate, then gets to work studying his family's special breathing technique, which requires a strong body and a huge amount of mana. Aaron trains like crazy, swinging his sword to strengthen his body, then uses the mana stones he bought to meet the second requirement, since those are the 2 conditions for unlocking the steel breathing technique. Back in the present, our boy feels smug about his victory and starts posing. But nobody is convinced. They wonder whether the fight was staged, which bruises his ego, so he turns to another knight named Mihail and challenges him. Before the guy can object, a girl named Karin walks over. She's the eldest daughter of Levidan's Steel Guard, and suggests having a backdo fight instead of a mana contest. The captain panics because Mihail is a 6th rank knight who fights like a 5th rank in regular combat. He's also tall with long arms, giving him a reach advantage, so the captain thinks the young master has no chance, but approves the match anyway. Then Aaron suddenly charges forward, and they start trading blows in a bare-knuckle brawl. Everyone watches in shock, because just days ago, this kid was getting knocked over by the wind, yet now he's completely dominating his opponent, throwing punch after punch, and Mihail doesn't even get a chance to fight back before it's over. At the sight of this, the crowd erupts, chanting the young master's name while Aaron stands there calm as hell. Karen walks over and touches his face, apologizing for underestimating him all this time and telling him how proud she is. Karen is insanely talented in combat. She would have already mastered the breathing of steel technique if her family didn't have that bullshit rule saying only men can learn it. Their father, Levidan, is genuinely upset that Karen was born a girl because she's clearly the most talented member of the family. But the sacred family technique can only be passed to men. Still, being a girl never stopped Karen from becoming a badass, which is why, when she sees Aaron working so hard during those secret training sessions, she understands exactly how much effort it takes. She emotionally pats his head, apologizing for judging him like everyone else when, as his older sister, she should have supported him. Meanwhile, Aaron feels guilty as hell because he only trained this hard to impress her. Out of all his siblings, Karen is the only one who isn't a completely judgmental asshole, so he counted on her being the first to notice his change and praise him. He silently apologizes to her while mentally preparing for what comes next. Later, at dinner, the whole family sits around the table, and their father keeps praising the food. Karen says she had the kitchen make an extra effort because Aaron will soon leave for the academy. Their other brother, Levidan, looks at Aaron as if wondering when he grew up. Aaron celebrates internally, thinking his master plan worked. He got Karen's attention, and she immediately started caring for him. Then his father mentions that Karen said Aaron defeated a knight in training, and our boy screams internally, yes, it worked. He knows this is his chance to finally earn his father's attention. He acts humble, saying he's not that good and it was only a small sparring match, but his brother Kieran cuts in, pointing out that the knight was only 6th rank and they didn't even use magic. Aaron sits there annoyed, wondering why this guy had to ruin his moment. But Kieran saves it by pointing out that Kieran only reached 5th rank at 18, while Aaron is 16. Kieran tries to argue back, but their father shuts him down, calling Aaron a fine young man, and saying his grandfather first entered battle at around the same age. Then Levedon extends his hand for a handshake, and when Aaron accepts it, he realizes it's one of those combat handshakes used to test each other's mana strength. He panics, knowing he needs to impress his father, but he also can't reveal more than rank 3 power without raising suspicion. His father closes his eyes and says Aaron has grown a lot. He'd worried his youngest would become a total loser, but now he can relax. Karen watches in silent fury as their father says Aaron will represent the family at the academy, admitting he neglected his youngest and realized it too late. Then their father drops the big question. As a gift for entering the academy, he asks Aaron what he wants. Our boy panics internally but keeps his composure, scratching his head and saying there is one thing, but then claiming it's probably too much. His father tells him to speak up and promises to grant whatever he can, but Aaron keeps playing hard to get, saying the request is too big and will surely be rejected. Levedon is impressed, saying he never knew his youngest could manipulate people this well, then offers to swear a mana oath. Karen jumps up and shouts, "Father," but it's already too late. Levedon places a hand over his chest and dramatically swears by mana, as head of the Steelguard family, that he won't break his promise no matter what Aaron asks. Aaron sits there thinking, oh damn, what do I say now? Then he makes his request. Cut to Kieran completely losing his mind, following their father and Aaron down the hallway while shouting that they can't break family tradition and demanding to know how anyone besides the family head could enter the treasury. Levedon explains that technically only the head may enter, but he once went inside with his own father. Kieran insists that was different, but his father asks whether he should break his mana oath instead, so Kieran backs down. Levedon unlocks the treasury and lays out the rules. Aaron may only enter the outer section, take one item, and spend as long as he wants choosing it. Aaron looks inside, thinking, finally, I'll get my hands on the real book of dimensional transactions. He walks through the dark room, thinking the book is the strongest weapon for protecting his new life and must never fall into anyone else's hands. He remembers that, in the last 100 years, only 2 people from Earth minus 1,342 became traders, his grandfather and himself. Unlike in his past life, when he found the book by accident, he can now see it with his special eyes, which means it can't be hidden in secret storage. Everything he did, pleasing his sister and gaining his father's attention, was meant to bring him to this exact moment, so he could find and destroy the real book of dimensional deals before anyone else obtained it. A few minutes later, Levedon waits outside, and Aaron emerges holding a golden statue. His father looks from the statue to his son, completely baffled. He asks why Aaron chose this of all things. Sure, it depicts the legendary hero Lazakan who saved Navarro from the Empire. Yes, it's worth more than 1,000 gold coins, but it's only quick cash, nothing special. Levedon is deeply disappointed, thinking his son entered the family treasury just to grab something shiny and sell it for profit. But Aaron is celebrating internally because his father has no idea what he truly came for. Our boy explains that the statue is actually the smartest choice right now. He can sell it, buy a decent sword, stock up on mana stones, and still have money left over. Levedon scratches his head, saying Aaron is difficult to understand, but tells him to do whatever he wants as long as he keeps training. Aaron bows and says there's more than one path to success, and if he isn't a sword prodigy, perhaps becoming a merchant is his fastest path to power. Inside, Aaron celebrates because he completely fooled his old man. Now we see what really happened inside the treasury. Moments earlier, Aaron was having a complete mental breakdown. He frantically searched through the shelves, shoving books aside and wondering, where the hell is it? The book of dimensional transactions he came to find isn't there. His eyes widen as reality sinks in. Either the book was moved sometime during the 17 years since his regression, or worse, someone is using it right now. Still, our boy forces himself to stay calm. Simply learning that it isn't here is valuable information, so he grabs the first expensive object he sees, the golden figurine, figuring he can sell it for good money anyway. But the moment he touches the statue, notifications explode before his eyes. Automatic transaction completed. His Eye of Insight skill activates, and several notifications appear displaying information about the status of his cashback bonuses. Iran realizes he still possesses all his merchant privileges from his past life. His jaw drops when a VIP account notification appears, and he thinks no way this is impossible, but clicks it anyway. The screen lights up, showing maxed out skills, 0 commission fees, complete seller information, price manipulation abilities, and automatic discounts. Basically, he has God mode for trading. 3 imaginary versions of him run circles through his mind, screaming with joy as he realizes these powers could move mountains. And his revenge plan has just been turbocharged. Back in the present, he's ready to get to work, starting by converting this golden knight into coins. The statue appears on the transaction scale, and our boy's eyes immediately narrow because they're lowballing him at 115 coins when it's worth at least 140 to 150. He activates his VIP skill, flow recognition, to reveal the true value, then completely loses his mind, screaming, "Where did those exchange market rats steal my 40 coins? After all, 40 coins equal 400 gold that they're trying to pocket." He flops onto his bed, thinking how convenient it is to trade while lying down, something he never imagined doing in his past life. Meanwhile, notifications keep arriving. Deal completed, skill bonus coins, level up progress, and Iran notices that the statue is selling incredibly fast. He browses for his next purchase and decides to stick with mana stones since they're a safe investment when a suspicious hooded seller appears, advertising cheap, high-quality mana stones. Iran looks at the listing and immediately starts calculating because he knows exactly who this guy is. Without hesitation, he messages him and calls him a scammer. Hearthstone receives the notification, checks who's contacting him, and immediately starts insulting the guy's entire bloodline in his head until he sees the profile picture and freezes. It's the same guy who already forced a discount out of him, and now this bastard has the nerve to return and demand more mana stones at the old low price. Hearthstone scrambles to save face, stammering that it was a one-time concession and that market conditions have changed. But our boy Uran doesn't buy it. He tells him to stop lying, then casually reminds Hearthstone that their entire chat history, screenshots included, was saved. Hearthstone glares at the screen, curses Uran under his breath, and starts doing some quick calculations. He's been taking losses for days without making a single sale, so selling cheaply to this guy suddenly doesn't seem so terrible. He sighs, swallows his pride, and gives in, offering 25 medium stones and 20 small ones. Aaron accepts immediately. Our boy spends 270 coins and receives roughly 40, something back through cashback, then immediately lists everything for resale. Medium stones for 12 coins and small ones for 3. He relaxes in his room thinking, buy low, sell high, that's literally all there is to it, then takes a nap like he didn't just commit financial terrorism. Cut to Hearthstone refreshing the marketplace. When he sees Aaron's listings, the guy nearly has a stroke. He slams his desk, screaming that he gave this ungrateful bastard a discount and this is how he's repaid. Meanwhile, Iran wakes from his nap to an entire wall of furious messages. But here's the thing. Our boy spent 3 years making cross-dimensional deals in his past life, and one rule was branded into his soul: never let someone else's emotional outburst interfere with your money. So instead of apologizing or backing down, Iran replies with the most unhinged, strangely formal roast imaginable. He calls Hearthstone an evil, incompetent entrepreneur and asks why he thinks he has the right to shout at customers. Hearthstone stares at the screen, completely dumbfounded, wondering whether this guy is actually insane. He tells Erun to stop, now genuinely convinced he's arguing with a psychopath, but the sales notifications keep arriving. Erun stones are selling like hotcakes. So our boy finally offers peace. Buy them at market price, and they can end the drama. Hearthstone fumes, calls the offer impolite, and refuses purely out of spite. Run just thinks, damn, this guy is sensitive. Then uses the one tactic that can crack any merchant's ego. He calls Hearthstone a big shot and says someone of his caliber shouldn't let petty emotions interfere with profit. And somehow it works. Hearthstone takes a deep breath, reminds himself that business is business, and asks for the market price like a changed man. Once the deal is secured, and he has even more stones in his inventory, Harun immediately posts an even cheaper listing. Hearthstone is absolutely furious. He messages our boy again, asking whether he's lost his mind, and demands to know whether he's secretly a trust fund millionaire, since nobody sells this cheaply unless they're stupid or rich. Arun sets down his teacup with a smug smile, thinking that, from a normal person's perspective, Hearthstone has a point. But Arun isn't a normal buyer. As a VIP member, his commission fees are reduced to 0, his spending privileges are increased by 30%, and he can undercut everyone in the market while still making a profit. He glances at the Mana Stone trade restrictions, notices how laughably loose they are, cuts Hearthstone off mid-rant, and logs out. He has real work to do. He sits cross-legged on the carpet and begins absorbing mana directly into his body, while thinking about what awaits him in the future. Arun closes his eyes, knowing that if he stagnates now, he won't survive what's coming. He splashes ice-cold water over his face, punches the wall beside the sink to wake himself up, and decides it's time. He drops the price of medium mana stones to 9.5 coins, and transaction notifications flood in like a broken slot machine. Then the system chimes, level up, access to level 1 trading channel granted. Heron stares at the flashing notification, thinking about how it took him an entire year to reach this point in his past life. This time it took 8 days. He looks at his progress screen. The guy has reached the maximum trade limit, fulfilled every system requirement, and is ready to advance. He presses accept, and system level 1 unlocks with a congratulatory message flashing across the screen. Heron stares at the notification and thinks, all right, this is where things get serious. Then he checks his new skills, and the first one, Sponge Inside My Head, activates. This thing is ridiculously overpowered. It lets him absorb information, events, and skills at incredible speed. But that's not even the craziest part. Now that he's advanced to System 1, the entire game has changed. This is a world where anyone, delivery drivers, restaurant workers, even random NPCs, can grind their way to night-level strength. The potential is insane. Before he can process any of that, some weirdo posts a message in the chat that sounds like it was written during a stroke, rambling about receiving a god's blessing but lacking the tools to express it, then asking everyone to name their price. Harun stares at the message, assuming it's a scam, and everyone else agrees, flooding the chat with confusion until the guy clarifies that he only needs a sword for martial arts. Harun facepalms, realizing that's all he meant, when another notification arrives. This one makes him do a double take. Sponge Inside the Head has maxed out by itself, reducing side effects and increasing absorption by 300%. He sits there completely baffled, wondering why everything is leveling up so quickly. He tries activating Eye of Insight to discover why his privileges were unlocked, but the skill refuses to work. He stares at the blank screen, unimpressed, thinking the clowns running the exchange center are completely useless. They can't even tell him why he received the privileges. He shrugs it off, assumes leveling up triggered them automatically, and moves on. Then his screen explodes with notifications. Special scroll sales, 0 commission periods, huge discounts, and the entire catalog floods his display at once. Arun blinks at the chaos, quickly runs the numbers, and realizes none of it actually benefits him. The special sales still charge market prices, making them expensive. While zero commission periods are useless because his privileges already eliminate those fees. Then he receives a direct message from the exchange center, congratulating him on reaching System 1 and awarding him 3 coupons. At first, he's unimpressed and assumes the rewards are garbage. But when he actually examines them, his eyes widen because they're incredibly overpowered. The first is a Dantian image containing 3 years of internal energy, plus 500 coins. He raises an eyebrow, wondering whether that's supposed to be impressive, then keeps reading and finds a third reward called Maximum Body and Sword Stealth. Before he can even understand what that means, the sponge skill devours the entire coupon and absorbs it instantly. A run stares ahead for a moment, then quietly loses his mind because what just happened is enormous. He pieces it together. Martial arts in his old world used mana as fuel, while the system uses internal energy. And the sword techniques he received from the system aren't merely stronger, they feel completely otherworldly, as if they came from another dimension. Best of all, this new internal energy is compatible with his existing mana core. He only needs to open his meridians, and he'll be ready to go. He presses a hand to his chest, eyes wide, thinking that instantly forming a Dantian and absorbing a sword technique is more incredible than he ever imagined. Bro realizes the system is absurdly overpowered. As long as he has coins, he can buy anything and become ridiculously overpowered. Speaking of coins, the system just gave him 500, so he decides to spend them immediately. With his preparations complete, A-Run chooses his first target and visits a spatial exchange merchant named Hyoja, who operates from the most dramatic-looking cave imaginable, complete with glowing red depths. The merchant sees A-Run approaching and immediately adopts an outrageously exaggerated customer service voice, gushing about how much he adores this customer. A-Run bluntly tells him to stop because it's creepy as hell. Shamelessly, the merchant tells him to consider it love for humanity. A-Run gets straight to the point and asks to see the martial arts scroll inventory. The merchant grins and quickly scans him. First-level merchant, solid physical stats, clearly from a lower system. He privately dismisses him as small fry, but remains polite because even small fry pay. He begins listing his inventory. The triple sword technique, sword balance technique, crouching tiger technique, body elimination, internal cultivation, piercing, striking, and everything else. But A-Run already sees through the scam because he remembers this merchant's entire business model. He specifically targets System 0 nobodies desperate to reach System 1, powerless people who were weak their entire lives and would spend every coin on anything that sounded legendary. The triple sword technique sounds limitless and divine, right? In reality, it only has 3 moves: stab, cut, and block. That's it. Aaron crouches, stares at the floor, and flatly says he's fallen for this exact scam before. He looks up with a sarcastic grin and asks whether mastering it will truly make him the strongest person in the world. Completely shameless, the merchant doubles down and says 1 technique wouldn't be enough anyway, then offers personal advice for only 20 more coins. A-Run looks ahead and says, "All right, I'll trust you, Hakchel Lee." The scene shifts to Mirim's 5th world, specifically the Mountain Bamboo sect, where a subordinate bursts in, shouting for the leader. Yuxiang whips around, instantly tense, and demands to know what happened. The moment Hakchel Lee's name is mentioned, Yuxiang's entire demeanor changes. He slams his fist onto the table and demands the source, asking whether they're absolutely certain. The spatial exchange manager turns around and repeats A-Run's messages word for word, while Jusong reads them carefully. Some random nobody from a lower system possesses information about their sect's deepest secrets and asks whether they'll reward him for dealing with their enemy. If they don't believe him, he'll simply let Hakshell escape. Jusong's first thought is that this must be a scam, but then A-Run tells him to check his information. Jusong does so and says, "Wait, you're from a lower system." Our boy nods and asks the obvious question. How else could he know something as classified as the Bamboo Mountain Secret Technique? Jusong falls completely silent, because that means the kid obtained the information directly from Hawkshell. Once he confirms it's legitimate, Jusong wastes no time and asks whether that bastard is involved in dimensional trading. Arun reads the situation perfectly, praises Jusong's sharp instincts, and explains that for a fugitive like Hawkshell, the dimensional dealbook is the ultimate insurance policy, essentially his lifeline. 2 seconds later, 200 coins enter Arun's account, making him spit out his drink in shock. Meanwhile, Jusong frantically asks in the chat whether that's enough, practically begging Arun to understand how desperate they are. Arun stares at the screen thinking, "Bro, I only wanted my 20 coins back." He glances at the merchant's grim smile and thinks, Hawkshell will never know those 20 coins marked the exact moment his entire life began falling apart. But Hawkshell was never the true target. Arun looks at the screen, thinking he could honestly let that guy go since he wasn't the one Arun truly wanted. His real target is a bastard named Seokhyun, a first-class martial arts scroll seller and System 2 operator, whom Arun personally blames for destroying the Steelguard family in his past life. Arun had searched for scrolls to continue his grandfather's legacy, and Seokhyun sold him the Bookmark of Desires, a cursed purchase that triggered the chain of events destroying everything he loved. Arun's red eye turns ice cold at the memory. He clenches his fist and quietly vows to return every ounce of shame and pain he's endured. Then he opens a new chat, sends a greeting, and Seokhyun quickly responds by offering diploma papers and books of change, then asks what he wants to buy. Arun casually says Hawkshell introduced them. Seokhyun pauses, thinking that if this guy came through Hawkshell, he may already know far too much about their operation. Still, he smoothly maintains appearances. A system warning appears on Arun's screen. Scam librarian steals scrolls, sells them to beginners at outrageous prices, approach with extreme caution. So, Kim casually asks whether that idiot Hawkshell is still scamming people with the triple technique. He calls anyone who falls for it a complete moron. Arun laughs internally, thinking, yeah, that one hits close to home. But he stays composed and asks whether Suyurin is really any different from Hawkshell. He receives a mild scolding for the comparison, apologizes with a smile that never reaches his eyes, and asks to see the sword technique inventory. Suyern tries selling Arun the Plum Blossom technique for 35 coins, even though its actual market price is only 15. He's shamelessly attempting to scam him with a smile, and although Arun has seen worse scammers, he still mentally records the sheer audacity. He buys it without complaint because he's playing the long game, accepting a small loss now to build trust and destroy this man later as revenge. Sekin believes he has found a rich fool, so he immediately offers friendship and welcomes Arun as a valued customer. Arun coldly accepts the friend request, thinking, got him, while already planning his next moves. His scheming is interrupted when Ezelnox enters his room and freezes completely. Arun has been so absorbed in plotting revenge that his murderous aura has leaked out uncontrollably, so he quickly apologizes and tries to brush it off. Ezel stammers as she reminds him that he missed morning training, then becomes extremely flustered when she accidentally sees exposed skin through his shirt. Blushing, she quickly looks away, while Arun privately notes that if she's already reacting this way before he's reached his full potential, things will become exhausting very quickly. As he's processing the situation, Ezel asks whether something is wrong, since he missed training and also had business with young Master Karan that morning. The moment she says that, our boy remembers what happened earlier. Arun had been peacefully training when his older brother Karan suddenly appeared, asking what he was doing there. Arun looks at him as if to ask, bro, why are you here? You never train with these knights because you think you're better than them. Kiran casually asks where he got that idea. Arun replies that anyone with working eyes can see it. That's when Karan asks whether he's lost his damn mind, and Arun immediately realizes he messed up. He awkwardly apologizes, says he was joking, and tries changing the subject by asking why Kiran came. But this sensitive bastard refuses to let it go. Without warning, he swings at Arun, claiming he'll teach him some manners. Our boy's eyes widen. He wasn't expecting a fight before breakfast. He dodges, thinking that his brother has always been touchy, but this is ridiculous. Kiran spins around and attacks again while Arun ducks low, genuinely confused about why his brother is so angry. Then Kiran warns him not to become arrogant, just because their father praised him once. Suddenly, Arun's hand bursts into flames. The brothers' fists collide, and Kiran is sent flying backward, staring at Arun as if he just witnessed reality glitch. He wonders where this power came from. Wasn't this kid supposed to be a weak rank 5 scrub? Now furious, he activates his aura, using a mana enhancement technique available only to rank 2 knights and above. Arun sees this and panics internally, wondering whether his brother has completely lost his mind and why he's escalating so far. Arun has been pretending to be a weak rank 5 knight this entire time, so he can't reveal his aura in front of everyone without destroying his cover. But his idiot brother has crossed every line and is attacking at full strength, so Arun can't maintain the act without getting his bones shattered. And our boy isn't interested in visiting the hospital, so he decides, screw it, I'm beating his ass today. Kiran charges with his aura technique, and Arun immediately counters with the stone-destroying strike. Kiran's face turns pale as he's launched through the air, completely stunned by how powerful his little brother has become. Arun lands gracefully and dramatically, with one arm swept behind him, then looks down at his defeated brother, who's lying on the ground, screaming about how Arun became so powerful. Arun smiles and slowly approaches, saying they may not have the best relationship, but surely Kiran agrees he went too far this time. Kiran struggles upright and demands answers, asking whether this power came from the secret vault and what Arun took from it. Arun's eyes widen as everything suddenly makes sense. Kiran is furious because Arun entered the secret vault, a place Kiran believes he should have accessed by now. Kiran rants that only he and their father have ever entered, demanding to know how Arun got inside. Then Arun realizes his brother doesn't even know the vault has separate sections, an outer vault and an inner vault. More importantly, their father probably doesn't know about the dimensional transaction book Arun found, and Kiran definitely never used it in Arun's past life. Arun concludes that the chances of anyone finding the book are quite low, since he died before ever reaching the inner vault. Either the book is hidden there, or it doesn't exist in this timeline. He realizes entering the inner vault will be much harder than entering the outer one, but he must find a way as soon as possible. Back in the present, Ezel grows worried when Arun doesn't answer and merely stares at the wall like a frozen NPC, so she calls his name. Arun plays it cool, smiles, and says nothing serious happened. He merely asked his brother to demonstrate his aura, but things escalated. Ezel asks whether he's injured and offers to bandage him, blushing as she thinks the young master has grown up and probably doesn't want her fussing over him anymore. Arun thanks her, but says he's fine, planning to take a healing pill later. He's also relieved his brother didn't unleash all his rage on him, and tells Ezel not to worry and to rest. She bows and leaves. Arun turns around, thinking he must enter the inner vault before leaving for the academy. Time is running out. Then his eyes narrow as he remembers that the incident is almost here, but this time he has a plan to handle it. Meanwhile, in the dumb blonde's room, the idiot is losing his mind, insisting it's impossible that he lost to his worthless brother. His sister Darren watches him unravel, biting her lip as she notes that her brother was completely demolished. Kiran slams his fist onto the table and declares that Arun is obviously hiding something, since he's been pretending to be weak all along. Darren shakes her head and says everyone knows that. Kiran thought Arun was a harmless bear, but he's actually a cunning fox. Kiran insists Arun didn't use his full power and was clearly holding back. Darren suggests he may simply be a stronger fox, but Kiran says he might actually be a tiger. They agree they must discover what Arun is hiding and what he's planning. Darren says she'll handle it and uncover every detail of his secret. Cut to a secret merchant alliance meeting where everyone is cursing our boy, complaining that the bastard is destroying all their business, and saying they need a plan to deal with him and Hearthstone. This bastard is leading the meeting, and he has a personal grudge against our boy. Then the scene returns to our boy, who's relaxing in his room and devouring dinner, when the system starts spamming notifications. He checks them and immediately notices something strange. Manastone prices are crashing, exactly as he expected. The problem is that everything is happening much faster than planned. He listed his mana stones for 1 coin less than everyone else, which drove the other merchants insane and completely disrupted the average price. But he isn't worried at all. He takes a sip and thinks, whatever, his VIP privileges still let him print money. His inventory screen appears, showing 34 item slots completely filled and a balance of 1,002 coins. He calculates that he can sell medium stones cheaply and still profit. But selling small stones for less than 2 coins is beneath him and not worth the effort. So he decides to focus on the medium stones for now, since they still earn a small profit. And he also needs to raise his system rank, so he can take revenge on that bastard Sokyun. Cut to Jinzai approaching with a massive catalog, presenting it like the crown jewels. It contains martial arts categorized by strength, skill, endurance, agility, and everything else. Aaron glances at it and immediately realizes this isn't cheap street stall garbage, but premium, expensive material. Still, he's not impressed enough, so Jinzai reveals his best item, a unique primary skill from the Thousand Swords library. A red screen appears, describing the legendary skill set, and Arun's eyes widen, not because of the skill, but because of the enormous price. This sect is serious. Its influence makes even the Mountain Bamboo sect look insignificant. A few hours later, our boy speaks with Seokyun, while continuing to act like a foolish, gullible System Zero beginner. The moment Seokyun receives his message, he appears clutching a scroll, saying he's been waiting all day, then hands over the requested items. Arun is slightly surprised they actually found them and genuinely shocked they managed it so quickly. The man with glasses proudly says the entire team worked hard because they can't keep customers waiting. Aaron smiles and immediately asks for one more thing. He invents a story about serving a wealthy lunatic obsessed with martial arts who won't accept mediocre books. And Seokyun believes every word, nodding eagerly and offering to help. Aaron plays him perfectly, asking to see something better than a collection of basic skills. Seokyun doesn't notice the trap and shows him the Thousand Swords' unique skill again. Arun pretends to consider it, then mentions martial arts from the 3rd or 4th Muram world. Seokyun decides to accept the request. Oren's eye glows as the trap snaps shut. He casually requests an advance payment, and 200 coins immediately enter his account. The deal will be completed in 5 days. Throughout it all, Seokyun keeps thinking that they're alone in this section of the library, and he absolutely cannot be caught. Cut to several hours earlier. Our boy is still speaking with Jin Shang, and since the conversation is going well, he finally asks the real question on his mind. Arun casually asks what would happen if someone tried selling a unique primary skill elsewhere. Jin Shang laughs as if it's the stupidest question imaginable. What suicidal fool would steal from the divine swords? Seokyun hides behind a shelf while Jin Shang swears that anyone attempting it would regret ever being born. Arun grins because step 1 is complete. Now he only needs to find 1,000 coins, the one minor problem remaining. After arranging a plan to ruin someone's life, our boy decides to take a walk. Later, he sits outside a yellow building, scrolling through screens as his supply of medium mana stones rapidly disappears. People keep messaging to ask about buying stones, only to respond that they refuse to sell him anything. Our boy keeps tapping the screen, as increasingly hostile messages tell him to throw his compassion in the trash. Arun mutters that these people are far more aggressive than he expected. Then he spots two girls but can't see them clearly, so he moves closer. Suddenly he hears a slap. Someone has struck one of the girls across the face, and he freezes when he realizes. The girl is Ezel, standing there with a red mark spreading across her cheek. Darren's hand remains raised as she demands to know what Ezel is hiding. Ezel cries but remains silent, holding her cheek and stammering that she's only a simple maid serving the young master. Darren slaps her again and says she'll give her one more chance. Tell her what Arun is hiding, or she'll need plenty of makeup. Darren is already swinging again when Arun approaches, asking why the hell Ezel is still standing there. Darren barely looks at him before asking what he's doing there. Arun asks what she's doing to his maid. Darren plants her hands on her hips and condescendingly claims Ezel's work has been terrible lately, so she's merely teaching her a lesson. Then she raises her hand again, acting as though she's doing Arun a favor by beating his servant for him. Ezel's eyes widen. She squeezes them shut and braces for the blow, but Darren's hand suddenly stops beside her cheek. Arun catches his sister's wrist mid-slap and says that if she has complaints about his maid, she can speak directly to him. Darren narrows her eyes and demands that he let go, but he talks over her, then throws her against a tree and tells her to leave him alone. She hits the ground and immediately starts manipulating him, asking what an insignificant servant means to him. Orang tells her not to touch his people and demands an apology. Ezel's eyes widen because she can't believe he's truly defending her. Then Darren does something insane. She slaps her own cheeks and asks whether he truly wants to act this arrogantly, because who will their father believe when she appears injured and claims her brother hit her? She looks down at Ezel and says she wants to see the maid's expression when Darren claims her brother struck her. Marks are already forming on Darren's face from her own slaps, and Orang says she never stops finding new ways to sink lower. He steps closer and says she'll remember this lesson once and for all. Darren's mouth falls open as she claims she has nothing to do with whatever he's about to accuse her of, but Aaron stares down at her and asks whether she's baring her teeth now. Is she planning to run to their father and claim her brother hurt her? Her teeth clenches. She panics internally, wondering how the hell he discovered her plan. Still on the ground, she suddenly changes tactics and admits her guilt, folding her hands and promising it will never happen again. Arun turns to Ezel and asks whether she's all right. She breaks down crying, saying she doesn't deserve this and doesn't deserve his protection. His hand tightens into a fist as he tells her she's one of his people. His expression hardens, and he says he'll never forgive anyone who touches his people, even if it's the goddamn emperor. Darren remains seated, listening while her mind races. With their backs turned to her, Aaron tells Ezel she deserves everything he's giving her. Darren tries to understand how her brother changed from a pushover into a protective badass, but none of it makes sense to her manipulative mind. A few days later, Hearthstone smokes cigarettes while reading market discussions, trying to discover where our boy is obtaining so many mana stones. He's clutching his head in frustration when a man called the Stone Seller suddenly posts a message saying someone must desperately need coins right now. Hearthstone studies the message and thinks this guy is somehow always online. Since he has no idea who he is, Hearthstone opens his profile, revealing all his information. The display identifies him as human race, server system level 1. The Stone Seller then says that sometimes 10 coins today are worth more than 100 coins later. Hearthstone nods, understanding the point. He has also made desperate deals whenever he needed quick money. But his expression turns serious as he says, sellers like this are destroying the entire market order. Cut to Hearthstone seated at a table, asking what the seller proposes. The Stone Seller replies that they have two options. Option 1 is to buy everything before the troublemaker can reach it. Hearthstone immediately rejects that as impossible and asks for another option. The Stone Seller sighs and says, fine. Option 2 is to crash mana stone prices even further themselves. Since option 1 was unrealistic, they choose option 2, and just like that, a merchant war begins. A few days later, a screen appears beside Erun, displaying constantly changing prices for medium mana stones. He covers his mouth and mutters that a full-scale price war has begun, meaning he's about to become much busier. Hearthstone clenches his fists and demands an explanation. Wasn't he promised definite results? The silhouetted man says he doesn't remember promising that. He only said they needed to lower prices to stop the troublemaker from buying every stone. Hearthstone grabs his head, arguing that the man won't stop selling stones, and these excuses are no longer convincing. But the stone seller doesn't care. Hearthstone can criticize him all he wants. His prediction was wrong, so what? Hearthstone frowns and asks whether he truly intends to surrender to the offender's pressure. The silhouetted man grins and says, "Trust me." He has a secret plan to stop this troublemaker. The stone seller continues, claiming that the beginner is losing momentum. While Hearthstone thinks, losing momentum my ass, the guy isn't slowing down at all. The stone seller asks whether Hearthstone seriously failed to notice the change in the troublemaker's pattern, and Hearthstone replies that he noticed nothing. The man explains that whenever they lower the price by 1 coin, the other seller counters by lowering it by 2, and this vicious cycle has continued for a while, yet today's price is exactly the same as yesterday's. Hearthstone checks the listing and admits he's right. The price hasn't changed. But what if the seller is simply saving his strongest move for the finale? Still, something feels wrong. Hearthstone wonders why the man would take such an enormous risk, then suddenly disappear. Another message appears, and the stone seller says the answer is obvious. The man intends to monopolize the entire mana stone business. Hearthstone's eyes widen at the idea. He takes a deep breath and asks about sales limits, since those would obviously prevent any monopoly. But the man confidently explains that the seller could hire assistants or create an alliance like theirs. Problem solved. Hearthstone can only stare and ask, "Wait, what?" The stone seller continues, asking whether that isn't exactly why their alliance was created. He explains the plan: gather many sellers under one organization, completely control the mana stone market, and manipulate prices however they want. Hearthstone begins sweating, admitting the man sounds as though he has attained some profound wisdom or trading enlightenment. He touches his lips and says, "Yeah, honestly, the idea is quite solid." Then we return to our boy and surprise. The stone seller was Aaron's alternate account all along. He's been staring at several screens thinking how absurdly broken and overpowered his special privileges are. He has been waiting for this union to form ever since he began selling mana stones. It happened much faster than expected, but that causes no problem, because this time he has maximum level privileges that these lower system peasants don't even know exist. He rests a hand against his face, thinking that information is everything in business. Whoever controls information controls the market, so information access being a special privilege makes perfect sense. A smile spreads across his face because he joined this multi-union the instant it was formed, and he knows exactly why people joined. There are essentially 2 kinds of people in the association's first wave: desperate sellers who can't survive without immediate rewards and need quick money, and complete psychopaths who lose their minds whenever a random beginner disrupts their established system. Then there's the third type, the absolute idiot Hearthstone, chairman of the entire association. Their current plan is to force our boy completely out of the mana crystal industry, and once that happens, they'll control every price. Hearthstone smiles while imagining his master plan like some evil genius. He intends to guide the troublemaker directly into his trap. He believes competition will naturally make people defend themselves and their territory. Folding his arms, he plans to sit back and enjoy the battle between the troublemaker and the multi-union. Then they'll hire a third party to swoop in and buy every mana stone at rock-bottom prices. Rai Tiamuran rests his head on one hand, thinking that buying low and selling high when prices rise is basic trading 101, not some revolutionary strategy. The scene shifts to Darren's room, where she sits at her table, holding her head, wondering when her younger brother learned all this. She remembers him approaching her and naming the company perfectly, without any hesitation. Then she hears a knock and angrily shouts that she specifically ordered everyone not to disturb her. But our boy says it's him and tells her to open the door, so she does. Rydian walks in casually, and she immediately asks why he's there. He says he wants to talk. She calmly asks what he wants to discuss, and he smiles before revealing it's about the company. She lets him inside, and we learn about the Damien firm. It's a company that supplies noble families with materials and goods, a fairly stable and respected business with nothing suspicious on the surface. But our boy knows better. In his past life, the firm became extremely close to Darren after he became a lord, then used money to manipulate him while he remained completely unaware of what happened behind the scenes. Back in the present, Darren asks how he discovered her connection to the company, and our boy casually shrugs. It wasn't difficult. The trading company changed dramatically after she became involved in its operations. He closes his eyes and tells her to calm down. He isn't there to expose or shame her, but to understand her position. He explains that, as the family's youngest child, he realistically won't inherit much of the estate, but as a son who mastered the breath of steel technique, he can still earn good money as a swordsman or mercenary. But what about her? As a woman in this medieval society, she doesn't even have that option. Her hands tremble against her legs as she asks what he's trying to imply. He responds by asking who approached whom first. She closes her eyes and admits that the company approached her, offered her a favor, and quickly included support for him in the arrangement. She knows she'll eventually have to repay that favor somehow. He frowns because he knows she's lying. A company that powerful and influential would never approach a noble daughter for no reason. She shouts, asking whether he's satisfied now that he's exposed her, and tells him to criticize her as much as he wants. He closes his eyes and says that isn't why he came. Arun presses a hand to his forehead, trying to find the right way to earn her trust. She asks what he actually wants, if not to shame her. He folds his hands and makes an offer she never expected. Let's work together. A few hours later, Arun finishes negotiating with Darren, who promises to provide him with all the details later. He says he's leaving everything in her hands, while the red-haired menace watches him leave with cold, calculating eyes. Irene knows the entire agreement is built on lies and bullshit, but it doesn't matter because he has bigger problems. Darren returns to her room, while our boy reflects that he's now stuck working with his suspicious sister, whether he likes it or not. Then Darren's eyes suddenly glow red, and a system window appears from nowhere. The Bamboo Mountain sect has sent 800 coins. There's also an extremely grateful message saying they can never repay his kindness, while our boy thinks a thank you card with cash attached would work just fine. He examines the rewards and realizes they were incredibly generous because the decorative box contains 10 bamboo life tablets. He thinks that anyone with access to the dimensional transaction book must be swimming in wealth like Scrooge McDuck. Meanwhile, his competitors are practically crying because of his price manipulation. Hearthstone had to lower his prices by 4 entire coins just to remain competitive. Our blonde mastermind flips through the transaction book, wondering why Hearthstone lowered the price by exactly 4 coins while clearly trying to reduce his losses. But it doesn't matter. He has the advantage of information asymmetry, and by changing his system nickname, he can purchase anything without limits. With cashback, he's effectively paying only about 3 coins per crystal, so he profits either way. He quickly checks his inventory. 480 medium mana crystals and 10 bamboo tablets. A ridiculous grin spreads across his face as he realizes he can easily buy another 500 crystals. He starts purchasing Hearthstone's listings like a madman, then has to force himself to stop because he's becoming rich too quickly. And it's honestly getting ridiculous. Night falls and the Damien mansion is crawling with guards. When a suspicious man in a raincoat approaches the entrance, a guard tries to stop him, but the man covers the guard's mouth with one hand. When he removes it, his face is revealed to be covered in horrible scars, making him look terrifying. Scarface says in a gravelly voice that he needs to see the manager, leaving the guard visibly terrified and shaking. But another guard passes by and suddenly recognizes him as the great merchant Olaf. His attitude instantly changes. He welcomes Olaf inside, explaining that they've been waiting and Miss Darren personally expected his arrival. They escort the frightening man inside, where Darren sits with her mug, completely shocked that he actually came to their mansion. Damon steps forward professionally and introduces himself as the company's director. Meanwhile, Darren squints at Eula from across the room, wondering how Arun knows this scarred monster, and whether he truly sells mana crystals, or this is some elaborate prank by her brother. Arun glances back at her, triggering a memory from earlier, when he grinned foolishly and promised that a serious, trustworthy seller would attend the meeting. Everyone sits at the negotiating table, and Arun asks how much they're willing to pay per crystal. Damon carefully examines a single crystal in his hand, saying it's difficult to judge the overall quality from only one sample. Arun doesn't hesitate. He casually drops a huge bag of crystals onto the table with a thud, having expected that exact response and prepared accordingly. 1 hour earlier, Arun celebrates in his room over saving many coins, since affiliate market prices are absurdly expensive. Holding 2 mana crystals, he carefully plans his disguise. He needs a human skin mask so nobody recognizes his face, along with a voice-changing pill from his secret supply to completely alter his voice. Huge bags of crystals are stacked behind him as he scrolls through the transaction book, and he decides to buy 5 void pills for extra security during the meeting. Because maintaining the disguise is extremely expensive, he plans to finish the entire meeting in exactly 30 minutes. Back in the present, Damon examines another crystal and sincerely admires its exceptional quality. Darren immediately demands 100 gold per crystal. Damon nearly chokes and says that's far too expensive, then counters with 90 gold, adding that nobody else will offer more. Aaron falls completely silent for several seconds, then visibly loses his temper. He stands and announces that he and Darren are leaving immediately. He dramatically drapes a cloak over Darren's shoulders and tells Damon he refuses to trade with people who can't recognize quality goods. He keeps a hand on Darren's shoulder, ready to leave. Darren plays along perfectly, saying she expected a more serious and professional discussion from a company that regularly trades with noble houses. Run celebrates internally because his sister understood the signal and supported his play. As they approach the exit, Damon slams both fists onto the table in panic, completely losing his composure. Darren casually suggests that Arun should sell to another company instead. The scarred man mentions that Kite Company happens to operate nearby. Damon leaps from his seat and desperately begs them not to leave. He nervously agrees to 100 gold and calls Arun a remarkably persistent negotiator. Our boy stops, turns back with a serious expression, and suddenly demands 120 coins per crystal instead of 100. Damon's face turns blue as he stammers and asks what Arun just said. He stares Damon down, asks whether he's deaf, and repeats that he wants 120 gold pieces per crystal. Damon is stunned because purchasing the crystals for 120 gold would leave him with no profit. He tries to negotiate, but our boy asks whether Damon truly believes he came without researching the real prices. Damon begins sweating, completely caught off guard. Leaning back, he invites them to sit and says he'll consider the 120 gold offer. Renly refuses. He tells Damon to forget it, says he won't sell, and starts walking toward the door. Damon finally gives in and accepts 120 gold, realizing he mishandled the deal. Darren stands there in shock, still wondering why the price suddenly rose from the previous low offer. Before she can ask, Damon begins backtracking. Nervously rubbing his neck, he says he might raise the price to 130 gold for crystals of such quality. Run looks at him as though he's grown another head and asks whether this is a joke when Damon claims he'd only retain a 10 gold profit margin. Damon explains that after storage fees, labor, and other expenses, he'd truly earn only 10 gold, assuming a run can supply enough crystals to make the deal worthwhile. Our boy casually drops a massive bag onto the table, holds up 3 fingers, and announces that he has 300 crystals. The confidence is unbelievable. Damon turns pale, realizing he's either being scammed or has discovered the deal of a lifetime. Sweat pours down his face as reality sinks in. Mana crystal prices depend entirely on supply, meaning even unlimited wealth can't buy crystals that aren't available. He stares at the bag, calculates quickly, and realizes the opportunity is too valuable to lose, regardless of the negotiation. He spreads his arms and admits the deal would benefit the company, seemingly trying to convince himself. Then he places both hands on the table and admits he expected little from this unknown seller. But a run completely exceeded those expectations. Damon smiles and praises Aaron's knowledge of the market despite his limited connections, though he admits it's suspicious that he's never heard of a merchant like him. Our boy notices the suspicion and directly asks whether Damon finds it strange that an unknown merchant is suddenly selling expensive crystals in bulk. The company head immediately backtracks, saying he'd never suspect anyone Miss Darren recommended. He's merely curious. Aaron turns to his sister, expecting her to stop the questioning, but when he looks over, she's even more interested in discovering his identity than Damon. Our boy can only think, seriously? He exhales heavily and begins explaining, but his real voice starts slipping through, making Aaron panic internally. He realizes 30 minutes have passed since he swallowed the voice-changing pill, so he deliberately coughs throughout the office to disguise his voice, wearing an irritated expression. He quickly takes another pill before anyone notices. Darren asks worriedly whether he's all right. Aaron covers his mouth and apologizes, claiming his illness requires him to take medicine regularly. Damon stands and says it must be difficult for the seller to remain standing so long, then offers to pay immediately. Our boy smiles and exhales in relief. Having narrowly avoided some extremely difficult questions, they finally leave the company mansion, and Darren says she's glad they're alone. Irene follows as Darren explains that the deal forced her to pretend they were associates, but now she wants to know how he knows her younger brother. She stares at him seriously. Our boy says it's none of her business, but she refuses to drop the issue and claims she deserves an answer. Irene is completely caught off guard and asks what she means by deserving to know. But when he studies her expression, he practically sees delusion staring back at him. Darren asks whether he thinks Damon is some neighborhood grocery store. Why would they buy mana crystals from a completely unknown source? She proudly declares that the crystals were only purchased because she guaranteed them. Aaron stands there with his mouth open, unable to understand where she found so much confidence. Darren continues, saying she's worried the company will blame her if anything is wrong with the crystals. Our boy keeps staring at her, and after everything she said, his awkward reaction becomes impossible to ignore. Sweat runs down Aaron's face as Darren demands to know why he's so determined to hide his identity. He thinks she's as sharp as ever, perhaps too sharp for her own good. She demands that he tell her everything, then raises a finger and announces that she's figured it out. This must be Aaron's trap. He bursts out laughing at the accusation. Darren angrily asks what he finds so funny. Aaron scratches near his eye and asks what kind of lunatic would spend 36,000 gold just to mess with her. Does she think he has money to burn? Darren tilts her head and remains suspicious. He asks whether she thinks he's a criminal and the crystals are stolen. Standing across from her, he points out that he'd have to rob the royal vault to obtain 300 crystals. Darren admits she considered that possibility because she can't imagine where else he found so many. Erin pats her head and says her brother Aaron told him about the fierce competition within the Steelguard family. Darren immediately tries to knock his hand away, demanding to know whether he's insane for touching her. Erin looks serious and tells her that in situations like this, she can only rely on family. Still holding the surprised Darren by the head, he advises her to build a better relationship with her brother. Bro is literally manipulating his own family into liking him. Then he turns away and tells Darren to wait in the carriage, adding that he'll send compensation through Aaron later. A few hours later, night has already fallen, and Aaron lies sprawled across his bed calculating his profits. The medium mana stones sold for 120 gold each, which converts to roughly 12 system coins. After subtracting Darren's 1% share and the 3 coins paid per crystal, he's basically counting his money, and the numbers look excellent. But then he remembers what he told Darren about family, and suddenly becomes emotional and sad, remembering how terrible his relationships with his siblings were in his past life. That's why he's trying to repair them this time. The problem is, he can't simply tell them he traveled through time and regrets being a terrible brother, so instead he gives them advice while disguised as Yulef. But advice that doesn't come directly from him, from Arian, won't have the same impact. He recognizes the irony, shakes it off, and changes his focus, thinking about how close he is to taking revenge on that scumbag Suk Yoon. He's worked hard for this moment, hoarding gold like a dragon because gold is extremely rare in the Muram world and used for nearly everything. He has an entire suitcase filled with it. A few moments later, he has already reached the daily sales limit. Just as he closes the window, another system notification appears. It's a message from So-kyun. His eyes light up the moment he sees the name. Euron's finger hovers over the accept button, ready to press it immediately, but he stops himself, realizing he can't appear desperate. He pulls back his hand, closes his eyes, and gives himself a mental pep talk. He actually counts down from 3, then finally accepts. A message appears, thanking him for waiting. On the other side, So-kyun adjusts his glasses, muttering that this man had better be punctual since he risked his entire reputation to obtain secret poison sect arts from Heavenly Sword Castle. Euron reads the message as the man describes how incredibly difficult it was to acquire the technique, even with all his connections and influence. Euron already knows he's being scammed from every direction, but calmly plays along. He takes a breath and replies, "Thank you for all your hard work." A new screen appears, showing the chaos cultivation technique. So Cooney continues his sales pitch, insisting this technique is unlike any other. Unlike the basic heavenly technique that any random castle disciple can learn, this one is exclusive and reserved for the elite. Arun grins from ear to ear because he finally has exactly what he needs. With his eyes closed, he looks as satisfied as if he'd won the lottery. Then So-kyun raises a finger on the screen and asks whether Arun can relay something to his client. Arun's eyes snap open. So-kyun says he'll be completely honest. 2,500 coins may sound expensive, but for the chaos cultivation technique, it's practically pocket change. Sitting professionally behind his desk, he explains that the official market price is only 2,000 coins, showing how valuable it is compared with the heavenly technique. And then, he claims the true market value is 5,000 coins. Arun thinks this is exactly how the bastard operates. He creates an illusion of exclusivity, then sells worthless garbage at inflated prices. Honestly, if he weren't a merchant, he'd be writing clickbait YouTube titles or running crypto pump and dump schemes. Our boy remembers his past life and how So-kyun used this exact method on him. The bastard outright robbed him and was one of the main reasons Arun ended up in such a terrible position. Just remembering it fills Arun with embarrassment and rage, since trusting the scammer was the greatest mistake of his life. Back in the present, Arun asks the crucial question, How much does he want? So Kuni adjusts his glasses like the slimy businessman he is and demands 4,000 coins, supposedly after a 1,000 coin discount. Arun grips his leg until his knuckles turn white, thinking that, although he's short by a full 1,000 coins, he can probably cover the remaining cost somehow. He replies that he owes 3 to 100, considering the 200 coins he already paid. Sokyun raises his hands in false innocence and says no. He asks whether this is Arun's first major System 1 transaction, because he clearly doesn't understand the process. He claims the earlier 200 coins were spent acquiring the book. The Zorong closes his eyes, genuinely stunned by how wicked this bastard is. He pushes back, saying Sokyun is demanding an absurd amount and that 1,700 coins is far too much. But Sokyun asks why he's reacting so strongly. Arun isn't paying with his own money, since it belongs to his client. So why not simply speak to the client first and hear their response? Back in his room, Arun fumes and curses the bastard internally. Sokyun has always acted this way, making it seem as though Arun loses by refusing. He touches his lips and calculates that even with every privilege and discount, he's still short by 25 coins. The only way to obtain the money is through the exchange center, which he desperately wants to avoid. He'd rather throw the coins onto the ground and watch them shatter than use that scam exchange. But he has no other choice. Time is running out, so he tells himself to calm down and not regret it, because he'll recover everything later. 4,200 coins mean nothing in the long term. He'll make the bastard repay 100 times more. Once the exchange is complete, Arun messages Seo-kyun, saying he's ready and the trade begins. Our boy receives the chaos cultivation technique, while the scumbag receives his 4,000 coins. The moment Aaron presses accept, a broad smile spreads across his face. The prey has finally taken the bait. After receiving confirmation of the trade, our boy checks his balance. It's literally negative, but instead of panicking, he grins like a psychopath and bites his finger, imagining how sweet revenge will taste. He wonders whether this is how the Bamboo Mountain sect feels after hunting Hawkshul for more than a decade. Because honestly, he doesn't feel even slightly guilty about what he did to Seo-kyun. Instead, he's excited about the chaos he's about to unleash. Right on cue, Seo-kyun sends another message, thanking him for the smooth transaction. Arun smirks like a villain, thinking someone seems extremely happy right now. Cut to Seo-kyun's room, where the bastard is indeed celebrating, pumping his fist and boasting that he doesn't scam someone out of 4,000 coins every day. He's probably already deciding how to spend it. Arun leans back with an evil smile and wonders aloud how long the man will remain happy. Then he begins typing. Seo-kyun sees the message and immediately becomes uneasy, asking what Arun means. But instead of answering, our boy casually reveals the bastard's real name, Jin Seok, and calls him a scammer. Seo-kyun freezes. Arun sends another message, asking whether the librarian knows what he's been doing behind their back. The bastard starts sweating and completely panics internally, wondering how Arun knows his real name and who he truly is. Still, he pretends to remain calm and replies that he has no idea what Arun means. Arun's smile widens as he tells Seo-kyun to stop embarrassing himself. Then he casually suggests bringing in the librarian as a third party to verify everything. Seo-kyun responds in all caps that they absolutely cannot do that. Arun covers his mouth to stop himself from laughing and asks why not. Then he acts out an imaginary conversation beginning, "Oh, librarian, your trusted employee Jin Seok has been," until Seo-kyun finally breaks and admits, "Fine, I'm Jin Seok. Are you happy now?" Seo-kyun sits at his desk, imagining a gigantic martial arts monster towering over him with murderous intent. Sweating heavily, he wonders who this person is. A wealthy martial arts enthusiast? Was the entire deal a trap? He frantically opens Arun's profile and sees it, System 0. His eyes widen because it makes no sense. How could a random boy from a lower system, literally the bottom tier, discover that he's stealing martial arts techniques from the library? and selling them under the alias Kokyu and the merchant? There is no record of this information anywhere. Arun decides it's time to establish the rules. He writes, "Listen carefully, because I'm giving you instructions and strongly suggest you follow them. The moment you break any rule, you become the primary enemy of the Castle of Swords." Seokuni thinks he has found a loophole. He adjusts his glasses with his middle finger, grinning as though he outsmarted our boy. If he's their enemy, then Arun must also become their enemy for working with him, right? He's proud of that response. Then he physically recoils when Arun replies that he thinks exactly the same thing. Seokun becomes confused, so Arun continues. He doesn't care how powerful the Castle of Swords is because they can't travel between dimensions. What can they do? Send him an angry letter? Panicking, Seokun tries another argument. They can suspend Arun's account, but Arun lounges smugly on his sofa, dismissively waving a hand and asking whether Seokun truly believes that. He'll start feeling extremely guilty very soon. Then Arun delivers the threat. What if he returns every book and reports the corrupt employee selling stolen goods? The merchant's confident expression turns to absolute terror in 0.5 seconds. Yaren continues, saying he heard that Sky Sword Castle treats thieves who steal completed cultivation skills like true criminals. Considering their torture methods, Seokun's end would be near. He pauses dramatically, then smiles and says Seokun must be brave to steal from them. Yaren rests his chin on one hand with a soft smile, thinking that the man is definitely terrified now. Then he gives the screen a snake-like stare and asks whether Seokun wants to live. Seikyan stammers yes, as though his life depends on it. Iran lays down the rules like terms and conditions. He dies if he responds after 5 seconds. He dies if he closes the dialogue window. He dies if he fails to follow orders exactly. He dies if he responds disrespectfully. Then comes the first order, simple and direct. Return my money. When Seikyan hesitates for even a moment, Iran adds rule number 5. He dies if he pretends not to understand. The merchant completely panics and immediately transfers 420 coins. Harun looks genuinely confused because that isn't the amount he paid. And Seokyan frantically explains that the system automatically deducts a 5% transfer tax. Harun slaps his forehead, remembering that he forgot the tax. Then an evil grin spreads across his face as he asks who will return the missing 580 coins. Should they ask the librarian to pay Seokun's debt? Seokun stammers that he'll pay and send it immediately, then transfers another 580 coins. Arun's balance rises to 3,692 coins, and his eyes widen because he now has 1,000 more coins than he started with, even after accounting for the transfer tax. But before he can investigate, he remembers something else and asks about the earlier 200 coin deposit. Seokyan protests that he spent it bribing guards and even used his own money. But Arun's eye glows red in the screen's reflection, and another 200 coins are transferred. Then our boy continues the extortion. All right, now that the chaos cultivation technique is settled, let's discuss the Green Cloud, Scarlet Dawn, and 8 Cloud Dragon techniques as well. Notifications begin flooding in one after another. The merchant buries his face in his hands, suffering a mental breakdown, while his balance falls to a pathetic 215 coins. Arun watches with an enormous smile and writes, "You should also compensate me for the time and effort I spent on this. Then I'll release you." Lloyd would be incredibly proud of our boy right now. When Seokyan reads that final message, his eyes nearly burst from their sockets. He wonders in absolute terror how Arun knows his exact balance. Can this man see his account? Is he a VIP player? What is happening? Seokyan sits there sweating, completely unable to understand why this VIP is targeting him so relentlessly. He asks what Arun wants and why he's doing this. Our boy casually replies that he's merely collecting an old debt. Before Seokyan can ask anything else, Arun immediately cuts him off. "You don't get to ask questions here, buddy." Seokyan uses the classic broke man defense, claiming he has nothing left, but Arun immediately calls him a liar. He knows Sekyun earned a fortune by scamming people through the zero-sum system. Sekyun insists he spent everything on alcohol, women, and supporting 2 wives, and is truly broke despite his empty account. Arun points out that he still owns valuable things he can sell. Sekyun's face turns pale as he realizes where this is going. Then it gets much worse. Arun starts discussing martial arts. Panic fills Sekwon's eyes. This man wants his internal energy, his cultivation techniques, his body lightening skill, and everything else that defines him. In their world, martial artists are defined by their techniques. Losing them is practically a death sentence. Tears stream down Sekyun's face as Eren gives him 10 seconds to decide, his life or his martial arts. The countdown begins, and Sekyun completely breaks down, sobbing over the table, because even a few basic techniques would let him rebuild, but surrendering everything would leave him below 0. The transaction is completed, and the moment Eren sees the techniques he received, he immediately starts mocking the man. "Bro, why are all your techniques so terrible?" Sekyun sobs openly and begs to know what else Eren could possibly want, since his balance is already negative 800 coins. Eren tells him to stop being dramatic, because he knows what kind of bastard Sekyun is. He must still have something hidden away. But when Eren checks the profile description, which reads a man who lost everything, even he feels slightly guilty and thinks, "My bad, man." Then Eren tells Sekyun he may return to whatever pathetic life he had before. Sekyun is completely confused, because wasn't he promised mercy? Eren clarifies the misunderstanding. He'll let Sekyun live only if he becomes an obedient puppet. Eren considered simply killing him, but that would be too quick and easy. Remembering everything from his past life, he realizes this bastard doesn't deserve a clean death. True revenge means making someone suffer until they beg for death. Eren's eyes become completely unhinged as he promises Sekyun will suffer so badly that he'll pray to die. He'll monitor him through email to ensure he remains miserable. Sekyun tries to respond, but Eren has finished talking. He simply walks away with a satisfied smile because everything went exactly according to plan. But to the next morning, and our boy is taking a victory lap through the forest. He's hyped as hell to test all the martial arts he finessed from Sekyun. As the sun rises, he runs through the trees using the Thousand Sages footwork technique, and a system screen appears with the details. At first, he thought it was only about speed, but then he leaps high into the air with his arms spread, like he's flying, and when he lands, he finally understands. This technique is far more than he expected. He thought absorbing all these skills might actually kill him, but his special ability let him absorb everything perfectly. He's already tested most of the techniques, but now it's time for the main event. The whole reason he went through all this trouble. He draws a sword and flows through one attack after another, and it's clear this is what he's been waiting for. All that effort and planning was just to obtain the Mystery Blade technique, the same legendary technique that turned Lycan Steelguard into a mythical knight before it supposedly died with him 10 years ago. Now our boy is reviving it on these same lands, wielding a technique everyone believed was lost to history. Eren stands there staring at the massive pile of rubble he just created. His eyes widen as he thinks, okay, maybe I trained a little too hard. But all that destruction makes him wonder whether Yahello could do the same. He's a first-class knight, so probably, since internal energy and aura work differently. What truly unsettles him is that Yahello, known as the greatest knight in the land, ranks the same as Sekyun, the guy who sat around doing nothing all day. That thought alone is terrifying. Eren gets annoyed with himself for overlooking something so obvious. But then it clicks. He's been thinking about this the wrong way. He stares at his hands with a huge smile, thinking about all these incredible skills. They're his now, so it's time to discover what he can really do. He launches into a full training montage, testing every technique one by one and loving every second. He races through the forest using the footwork of 1,000 changes, Something feels slightly off, perhaps because he doesn't fully understand the system yet. But the skill is still broken. He punches the ground and completely obliterates it, sending rocks flying everywhere with the breaking fist of despair. Then he extends his fingers in concentration and tests Golden Wheel, which seems like the weakest skill, though its ability to reveal pressure points may prove useful later. He wipes sweat from his face, exhausted, thinking about how all 5 techniques work with continental martial arts. Then he starts second-guessing himself. Is training internal cultivation wasting his mana? He decides not to overthink it, since martial arts attract too much attention, and now is definitely not the time to stand out. The more he considers it, though, the more this feels like a win-win situation. The internal cultivation of Danyan and his heart's mana could each prove valuable in different situations. He scratches his head, realizing he now needs to train twice as hard. Chuckling to himself, he wonders whether he can combine these 2 completely different techniques. Since they use the same energy points, it's worth a try, right? He closes his eyes and focuses, then mutters some philosophical nonsense about mirages being both near and far. A bright sphere suddenly appears in the darkness, surrounded by flying sparks. He still can't see the entire picture clearly, but then his hands begin glowing silver, and Arun is genuinely shocked as a silver aura manifests. A little later, Arun returns to the castle and heads upstairs. The more he thinks about everything, the more questions keep appearing, but revenge and the satisfaction it brings are the best he can hope for right now, so he accepts it. Halfway up the stairs, a servant comes sprinting toward him in a panic, saying he's searched all morning. Arun tells him to relax, explains he was taking a walk, and asks what's wrong. Apparently, his father has been looking for him. The servant practically begs Arun to hurry to the office immediately. Our boy wonders why his father wants him so early, but goes anyway because those summons can't be ignored. He knocks, hears permission to enter, and finds his father working through piles of paperwork while Kaloy the overseer stands beside him. Arun thinks about how Kaloy is a calm and capable man who manages the estate. He isn't a knight, but he's still dangerous with a sword, making him his father's right-hand man and personal shadow. His father, Lelevedon, looks up and immediately notices that Aaron has been training. He says he likes that energy, but Aaron stiffens because standing before his father feels like standing beside a supernova. The man is at heroic rank, and for context, there's an invisible wall between awakened and heroic that most people never overcome. So yes, his father is built differently. Back in the present, Lelevedon asks whether Aaron said he wanted to pursue other paths. Training since dawn seems rather unlike him. Aaron explains that there are many paths, and he doesn't have to choose only one. Like this is a single-class RPG. His father points out that he's chasing 2 rabbits, swordsmanship and trade, neither of which is beginner-friendly. His eyes widen as he says he's curious how many more times Aaron will surprise them. He thought Darren was the merchant of the family, but apparently he was wrong. Then he asks why Aaron hid his talent for so long. Our boy responds with another philosophical line about how the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. So it's wiser to keep your true strength hidden. The praise ends there, because now comes the punishment portion of the meeting. Levanon asks whether Arun understands his mistake. Arun nods and admits he was wrong to use the family name for business. Our boy starts sweating bullets when his father casually says he intends to meet the merchant personally. The old man asks why the merchant has been so quiet lately and whether they can remain in contact. Arun assures him that they'll meet and tells him not to worry. Then his father asks about leaving for the Night Academy in 3 days. Aaron confirms that everything is prepared. But when his father asks whether he needs help, he thinks there is something his father could do, but he can't exactly ask for it. So our boy becomes vague and mysterious, saying that his father's concern is enough. The conversation ends, leaving Aaron standing there wondering, how the hell did his father discover everything so quickly? Before he can process it, Cowley appears and asks to speak with him. He wastes no time and asks our boy how Aaron's father learned about the situation between Darren and the firm. Aaron knows someone informed him and worries that if his father questions Darren directly, she'll fold instantly and reveal everything. But then Callie explains that his father was actually surprised and expected Iron to stop his sister from becoming involved. That never happened, yet his father isn't angry. Instead of shouting or punishing her, he's letting Darren learn the hard way by facing the consequences herself. This time, however, everything worked out, so there's nothing they can do. But this creates a problem for our boy, because all of Darren's weaknesses have suddenly disappeared. Kalu then asks how he discovered the connection between the firm and his sister, convinced someone within the company tipped him off. Our boy simply shrugs and says he guessed. An estate this large needs major customers, and merchants will do anything to secure them. So they offered bait, and Arun's sister swallowed it like a hungry goldfish. Kalu leaves after that, while Arun remains there thinking about how this entire situation is beginning to seriously irritate him. Once everyone is gone, Arun decides he needs to prepare before leaving for the academy. He opens the affiliate market and searches for investments. The moment he sees the prices, he becomes furious because everything is absurdly expensive. A year of internal cultivation costs 3,000 coins, supposedly equal to what first-class workers earn in a year. To clarify, a year of internal cultivation doesn't mean literally training for 1 year. It's a unit used to measure power or progress, similar to how computer storage is measured. He remembers spending an entire year grinding with basic techniques and how the system set these prices long ago. He can't call them unfair, but he still wishes they were cheaper because everyone loves a bargain. So Arun starts hunting for deals, sets the maximum price to 300 coins, and scrolls through the shop until something appears. It's a strange listing from a woman talking about her husband, which seems suspicious as hell. Still, he buys it. 10 years of internal energy for 2,300 coins. Looking at the purchase, he realizes he could have bought potions or fermented cultivation products to absorb slowly, but he has no time for the scenic route. So he sits on his bed and decides to absorb everything directly. He closes his eyes and everything goes wild. A glowing blue object appears, with lines flowing toward it. Wind tears through the room like a hurricane. Steam rises. His hair flies upward like an anime protagonist's, and his bed sheets are thrown onto the floor, while his expression remains completely serious through the entire display. When it finally ends, Arun opens his eyes and realizes he just completed 60 years of internal cultivation in one sitting, which is honestly ridiculous. He checks his status and sees that one achievement has been unlocked. The next requires him to raise the rank of his soul image. That's where his plan falls apart. He intended to sell all his martial arts items and quit trading to focus on other matters. But that won't happen now because he wants to advance to System 2. And to do that, he needs another item he's wanted for a long time. Once again, he opens the affiliate market and searches for the yin and yang bugs. Arun opens the description for the yin and yang bugs and realizes he should research them before spending his coins. So he contacts the seller through the chat, and the man begins revealing an incredible amount of information. These aren't normal shop items, but actual living organisms. The bug part of their name means loneliness, because they're parasites that live inside people and completely alter their minds. The seller explains that anyone who absorbs them loses all hope and feels as though their entire life is collapsing. But the bugs can also completely rewrite a person's personality. They can turn an honest, generous person into a lying, greedy bastard, or do the reverse and theoretically reform terrible people. Though realistically, nobody uses evil mind control bugs for charity. Seller's explanation begins making Iron uncomfortable, so he activates Eye of Insight to learn more about the man and several system windows appear with information. They include suspicious details about soul images and evil gods. And after reading everything, our boy becomes 100% certain that this man is completely insane. Somehow, that makes him more trustworthy because at least he's honest about being a psychopath. The blood demon continues explaining the bugs and eventually gives one crucial warning. Never use them on family. Iron simply replies, understood. The man warns him not to use them on family members or lovers because once inside someone's body, they grant total control with no way to reverse the process. He says people constantly ask how to remove them, especially men who use them to make women fall in love, then developed real feelings and regretted everything. The message is clear. Once these bugs enter someone, they're permanent, like a cursed tattoo, so they must be used wisely. Aaron smiles because this is very different from what he expected to buy. But now a plan is forming and he's already thinking about who will be lucky enough to swallow the bugs. Cut to the night training hall where Javis is practicing with his sword. When Aaron arrives carrying a cup, Javis finishes his routine while our boy watches. Aaron approaches and praises him, saying he's truly built differently because this level of training would make ordinary knights collapse from exhaustion. Yet Javis remains standing as if it were nothing. Aaron sweetly compliments him and casually offers him a drink. Javis takes the mug ready to thank him for his kindness. Then he looks down and sees a green abomination floating in the cup, surrounded by vile-looking liquid. He immediately thinks the toxic sludge will destroy his throat. He turns toward Aaron, ready to politely refuse, but our boy uses his ultimate weapon. He gives him adorable, shining puppy dog eyes, and with one look, Javis knows he's trapped. There's no escape. So he gulps down the disgusting mixture, dying internally the entire time. Aaron watches like a proud parent and says he made it especially for Javis, and that it's good for his body, which isn't suspicious at all. Javis returns the empty cup and thanks him. Aaron can tell he isn't grateful and probably wants to vomit. Then Aaron asks him for a favor. He wants Javis to move farther from the palace. Javis is confused but agrees, because what else can he do after drinking mysterious green sludge? They enter the forest, and Aaron asks Javis to show him his aura. Javis thinks it's rather adorable, assuming Aaron is simply a curious child who wants to see a magic trick. He draws his sword, tells Aaron to step back for safety, and concentrates. His sword begins glowing as he activates his aura like a character powering up in a shounen anime. Aaron watches closely, thinking, this is exactly what you'd expect from the Ace Knight, an impressive display. But when he studies the aura's actual quality and density and compares it with his brother's, the difference is enormous. Aaron smiles, thinking that although Javis's aura would impress ordinary people, it isn't strong enough to truly worry him, and everything is proceeding better than expected. Javis finishes displaying his aura, looking slightly proud, and when Aaron praises him like an excited fan, Javis becomes shy and says he's nothing compared with the count or captain. Then he realizes something. Both the captain and Aaron's father have auras, so why did Aaron choose him? Aaron explains that Javis is the youngest. He likely awakened his aura around 20, perhaps even earlier, so it has been no more than 10 years. Aaron gives a speech about how incredible it must feel to overcome that wall and surpass yourself, asking who else could understand that feeling. Javis scratches his head and wonders why they needed to walk so deep into the forest for this. He decides teenagers must simply be unusually emotional. Then Aaron suddenly claps his hands, and the entire atmosphere changes. The friendly child act disappears, now wearing a vicious smirk. He asks whether Javis finally understands. He has finally caught him. Javis stares in confusion, wondering whether this is even the same person. Aaron mocks everything he said about overcoming walls and surpassing yourself, calls it complete nonsense, then casually asks whether it would be bad if everyone learned Javis's secret. How's the weather in the south, Mr. Emperor Spy? Then he addresses Javis by his real name, Harvest Durkle. Javis panics internally as his entire mission collapses. He tries to act calm, pretending to be confused and saying that calling him a spy is a bit extreme. But Arun refuses to play along, pointing out that everyone behaves the same under pressure. Javis tries to recover, arguing that if Arun had real evidence, they wouldn't be alone in the forest. He would have already reported him to the Count, or Captain. Arun calmly asks whether that means Javis is admitting he's a spy. Javis quickly backtracks, saying Arun is fortunate he isn't one, because otherwise he wouldn't leave the forest alive. Arun asks whether that's a threat. Javis says no, only that Arun is being extremely careless. Arun laughs and agrees. He's the only person who knows, and they're completely alone. He even asks whether Javis could kill him right now. Javis thinks the boy is either unbelievably stupid or attempting some strange intimidation tactic. Either way, knowing his real name makes Arun too dangerous to leave alive. Javis draws back his sword to finish him, swings at Arun's head, and the boy vanishes. Javis looks around in confusion, sword still raised, completely certain he struck him. Then he hears something behind him and barely blocks Arun's attack in time. When he looks up, his entire worldview collapses. Arun stands there holding a blue glowing sword surrounded by his own aura. Javis looks down and realizes his sword has broken in half. Arun mocks him, asking how he became a spy when he attacked so obviously and exposed his back like a complete amateur. Kneeling, Javis curses himself for never taking the youngest Steel Guard son seriously, since everyone called Arun useless trash. Even after learning that he hid his talent, it seemed unimportant because the island was already filled with geniuses. But Aura at 16 years old is completely different. That's the level of legendary heroes like Lazakan or the current hero Levidan. Javis discards his broken sword, realizing his life is truly in danger. Arun casually looks at him and suggests a fistfight, then throws away his own sword. Javis is shocked that this lunatic discarded his advantage. Arun extends a hand with the same evil grin, inviting him to attack. Javis knows fighting an aura user barehanded after losing his sword is incredibly foolish, but he has no choice. He screams and charges at Arun with his fists. Arun closes his eyes and takes a deep breath, then drops into a fighting stance. Javis raises an aura-covered fist, the breaking fist of despair. World Breaker. Our boy unleashes the skill and immediately thinks, yeah, that may have been excessive. Javis lies in a crater, coughing blood and completely unable to understand what happened. He watches Arun approach casually and wonders how the hell this man concealed such abilities. Javis tries to act tough, asking whether Arun is all right and attempting to rise, but he hiccups and collapses. Arun stands over him calmly and warns him not to resist, or things will become much worse. Javis clenches his teeth in anger, realizing Arun isn't bluffing. The difference in strength is now obvious. Holding his broken arm, he thinks he's completely finished. He asks Arun who exposed him, the inspector or the security bureau. Arun looks at him like an idiot and says he still doesn't understand the situation. Arun is asking the questions, not him. Then Arun explains that he's always wondered why the Empire cares so much about the island. Steel Guard is only known as the place where Levidan stopped the Imperial invasion. It isn't a center of research or strategically important, so why is the intelligence department tasting spies here? What does the Empire truly want? And they didn't send an ordinary agent. Javis is basically a medieval Lloyd forger. He has every spy skill and can use aura, meaning he's also a knight. Sending someone this capable proves the Empire is genuinely concerned about Steel Guard. Arun says remaining silent only makes Javis appear more suspicious. But Javis refuses to answer. So Arun changes tactics and asks why he's so loyal when he's merely a replaceable tool. Does he truly believe the Emperor cares about him? Javis says it doesn't matter. Arun replies that he could force him to speak, but that would only make things worse. Javis dramatically tells him to tear out his nails, remove his limbs, or do whatever he wants. Arun tells him to relax, saying he never even considered that because he isn't a savage. He knows torturing a trained spy is completely pointless. Then Aaron produces a small bottle. Javis stares at it in confusion and asks, "What is that, a bug?" Aaron sighs and says someone would be furious to hear him call it that, then explains that they're yin-yang bugs. The one in the bottle is yin, while Javis has already swallowed the yang. Javis turns pale and demands to know what Aaron means by saying he ate one. Aaron reminds him of the drink he inspected earlier and believed was safe. It wasn't. Javis immediately starts vomiting, while Aaron calmly tells him to relax because it's too late. The beetle is probably already inside his brain. Aaron explains that the bugs share sensations, especially pain. If the yin dies, the yang goes insane and eats through the host's brain until both the person and bug die. Javis kneels and calls it nonsense, insisting he's never heard of creatures like these. Aaron draws a long needle and says it's better to experience something once than hear it explained 100 times. Before Javis can react, Aaron pushes the needle into the jar. The white beetle screams, and Javis feels as though 1,000 lightning bolts rip through his skull. He writhes in agony while Aaron explains that the beetle feels more pain than the yin. But the host experiences even more than the beetle. Aaron begins describing the steps his mentor taught him. Step 1 is light poking, which feels like countless spears repeatedly stabbing the body. Step 2 is immersing it in cold water. That feels like freezing solid and suffocating, worse than being tortured naked on a snowy mountain. Step 3 is holding it near fire, which feels like being thrown into hellfire while your flesh burns from your bones. Except all of it happens inside the mind. Aaron rubs his chin in satisfaction, thinking his mentor didn't exaggerate, while Javis lies completely broken. A few moments later, the boy is thoroughly tamed. Javis confesses everything, admits he's a spy, reveals his real name, and prepares to answer questions. Aaron directly asks why he came to Steelguard and what the Empire wants. Javis spills everything, explaining that the Empire fears the appearance of another Lavadan. The Emperor is the only person ranked above heroic, and since mythic ranks are supposedly lost to history, legendary rank is considered humanity's absolute limit. But Lavadan, the knight who stopped the entire empire from conquering a continent, the Heart of Steel himself reached mythical rank. Then his son also reached heroic rank. Aaron tells him he already knows all that and demands something new. Javis explains that a few heroic ranks aren't the problem, because the Empire has those too. They even possess a legendary rank, so that isn't what frightens them. The real concern is a heroic rank son born from a mythic rank father. Could that truly be a coincidence? The Empire began wondering whether the Steelguard bloodline itself was producing these monsters. Aaron directly asks whether this is the Emperor's theory. Javis lowers his head in silence, confirming everything. Aaron presses him for the actual intelligence. Javis begins praising Kiran, the golden grandson everyone admires. He says reaching second rank at his age is impressive, and claims he could match his grandfather or even his father. But Aaron coldly interrupts and says that's impossible. Javis agrees, saying he'd be pleased if Kiran even reached awakened rank, because he believes the bloodline weakens with each generation. Then he looks at Aaron and reveals the truth. At least that's what he believed until now. He admits he was completely wrong, because Aaron clearly inherited most of that legendary bloodline. Aaron frowns, realizing the spy isn't merely mistaken, but completely wrong. Aaron can only use aura because of the dimensional transaction book. It has nothing to do with genetics or the bloodline the Empire is investigating. What matters is that the Empire is still watching them, meaning his father's disappearance may not have been a random tragedy. It could be the true reason Steelguard fell. That disappearance became Navarro's greatest unsolved mystery, and Aaron never solved it, even in his past life. Now he begins connecting the pieces. The Empire isn't merely spying. They're actively trying to prevent another Lavadan from rising, creating an entirely new problem he never expected. Cut to his father performing mental training indoors when he suddenly screams in pain. This has been happening far too often recently. He wipes his mouth and finds blood on his glove. He doesn't know when it began, but training now causes brutal headaches. The blood proves the problem is becoming dangerous. Worse, it won't disappear, and resting does nothing. He wonders whether it's an old internal injury he ignored, or perhaps a demon of the mind tormenting him. At that moment, Colloid interrupts and apologizes for disturbing his training, but says the matter is urgent. Levadan rises and asks what happened. Colloid says his youngest son has returned. Levadan simply responds, "All right." But Colloid panics and explains that he's with the merchant Olaf and has discovered an imperial spy. Levadan's expression changes when he hears that his youngest somehow brought back an imperial spy. Next, we see the White Palace rising through the clouds, with a dramatic scene unfolding on its steps. Eren and the warden stand above Eren's group, including a man in a white cloak who bows while another man lies dead on the ground. All the siblings stare in shock at Javis's blood-covered corpse. Levadan studies the body and realizes the spy is truly dead. Eren immediately bows and apologizes, saying he tried to save the man's life but failed. His father tells him there's no need to apologize and orders him to receive treatment. But Eren insists he's fine, so Levadan demands the entire story. Eren turns toward the hooded man beside him and introduces him as the Manastone seller. The hooded merchant sits calmly with his eyes closed, while Levadan says he's heard of him. Eren explains that he went late to meet the seller. They left together, but he sensed someone following them. The others wonder why anyone would follow a random merchant all the way there. Eren says he lured the spy somewhere quiet and confronted him, at which point the bastard drew his sword. Levadan asks how Arun knew the man was a spy. Arun hands over a folded sheet of paper and asks the butler to deliver it to his father. Everyone freezes in shock as Levadan reads it, hums thoughtfully, then looks up and confirms that just as his son claimed, the knight was unquestionably a spy. Kirin completely loses his temper and asks whether what's written is really true. Levadan explains that it's a code used by the Imperial Information Department and says he's seen this type before. Kiran reaches out and asks whether it could merely be a coincidence or random imitation. Levadan gives him a disappointed look that makes even Arun fall silent. Levadan asks his eldest son whether he doesn't want this information reaching the Empire. Kiran becomes defensive, insisting the Empire is a threat they must handle. But Levadan asked whether that's truly his reason. Kiran insists it is, but Levadan already understands him perfectly. He reflects that some people always believe the best outcome will happen. It's like assuming it will rain tomorrow simply because it didn't rain today. That's acceptable for ordinary people. But he tells Siran that Eren doesn't think that way. If there's no rain, he prepares for drought. That's how a leader thinks. He asks whether Siran understands. His son exhales, lowers his gaze, and quietly says he does. Levadan praises Eren's work, while Eren humbly claims he only caught the spy by accident. Meanwhile, Siran stands there clenching, his teeth in pure anger, silently cursing Eren because his younger brother has once again made him look foolish before their father. The scene shifts to our boy's room, where he sits on the bed, honestly surprised they've confined him there. He has only a tiny scratch, yet everyone treats him like he's dying. He receives potions after every meal and mandatory examinations, all personally ordered by his father. Then Arun turns toward Javis and asks how long he intends to keep wearing the mask. Javis removes it and stares at everything in surprise. He has only spent 1 day with our boy, yet he's faced shock after shock, first Arun's incredible strength and now this entire spy operation. Seeing Javis examine the mask, Arun casually warns him to handle it carefully because it's now his lifeline. If he damages it, Arun can never reproduce that exact face. Javis is confused at first, then realizes the mask is made from real skin. He freezes in horror, his hands shake, and he drops it. Arun calmly watches him panic and reminds him not to drop his lifeline. Javis eventually regains enough composure to ask why Arun keeps hiding how powerful he truly is. Arun shrugs, saying he's only 5th rank, and people already act strangely around him, so revealing his real strength would be worse. He says a chisel can only withstand so much pressure before the stone breaks. But Javis disagrees, reminding him that he's a descendant of Laziken Steelguard. He suggests Arun could display his power openly if he wished. Javis looks ready to suggest something else, but Arun immediately stops him. He tells him not to become arrogant and asks whether he wants to become a walking advertisement that draws the Empire's attention. Javis quickly backs down. Then Arun raises a small bottle containing a larval slug. He smiles, silently reminding Javis that he's already under Arun's control. Javis turns pale but knows he has no leverage. He hands over the spy report he prepared. It describes Arun as a complete nobody with no progress, a brainless idiot with a worthless mind. That was the plan, but Arun still pretends to be mildly offended. The report lists everyone's progress except the female steel guards. Apparently everyone except our boy is progressing well. Arun scans it and jokingly complains about the insults. Javis becomes defensive, reminding him that hiding his abilities was Arun's idea. Arun agrees, but says lies must be buried among truths because being too obvious is equally dangerous. Javis offers to adjust the report and place Arun around 6th or 7th rank instead of calling him completely useless. When Arun asks how he'll send reports without a communications manager, Javis says he knows an agent in Akadio. Arun simply responds, "Good. It seems they'll be taking a trip soon." Then he dismisses Javis. Internally, however, he wonders whether this is wise and whether Javis can truly serve as a double agent. He decides to monitor him closely. If Javis ever returns to the Empire's side, there's always the bug in the bottle. Immediately after Javis leaves, Arun hears footsteps, and his father Levidan enters. His hair is disheveled as he asks how Arun feels. Arun is visibly shocked because this kind of concern never existed between them in this life or the previous one. He's accustomed to distance from his father, so having him sit beside him on the bed feels completely unfamiliar. Arun forces a smile and says he's perfectly fine thanks to all the potions. He also tells his father not to postpone the journey. Levidan falls silent briefly, then explains that they found the spy's hideout. His men searched all night and discovered the spy had been disguised as a merchant. Because of that, they're increasing the number of guards. Still seated beside Arun, he says they discovered everything because of him. Arun tries to dismiss it as nothing, but Levidan interrupts, saying Arun achieved something significant, yet that doesn't give him permission to risk his life. Levidan refuses to accept the possibility of losing him. Arun studies his father and begins comparing him with the man he remembers. The Levidan from his past life was cold, distant, and emotionless. The man sitting before him is completely different. Then the realization hits him hard. During Steelguard's fall, he remembered every person present. His brothers, sisters, and everyone else were there, but not his father. Levidan disappears 2 years from now, while Arun is at the academy, leaving him with only childhood memories. Arun realizes he's misunderstood his father all this time and kept him at a distance, only now seeing how wrong he was. His father breaks the silence, saying Arun's recent behavior convinces him he'll be fine in the capital, but still urges him to remain cautious. Arun looks at him sadly, thinking his father is the one who truly needs to be careful. Levitan notices the stare and asks whether Arun is injured somewhere. Arun quickly snaps out of it, waves the concern away, smiles broadly, gives a thumbs up, and says he's fine and was only listening. Internally, he curses himself for nearly revealing everything. He considered telling his father the truth, but knows it would make him sound insane. So he swallows the words and decides to change the future himself. Outside, our boy and his father stand before the vault. Because of Arun's recent achievement and his approaching departure for the academy, his father decided to reward him. Arun immediately asked to enter the vault, so now they're here. Leviton opens the door and gives Arun 1 hour inside the inner vault. Arun is thrilled but hides his excitement. His father notices and asks whether he likes the vault that much, adding that Arun can simply ask if he wants spending money. Arun turns and notices the disappointment in his father's voice. After all, if anyone else received the chance to ask him for anything, most people would request training from the heroic Night King. Yet Arun only asked for time inside the storage room. Arun smiles, waves it off, and says he doesn't need gold, only the chance to look around. He feels slightly guilty, silently apologizing to his father, because everything he says is technically a lie, since he already knows this place from his past life. Leviton laughs softly and says that's good, then goes outside to wait. Just like that, Arun is alone in the vault, reunited with shelves of objects he remembers like old friends. He wanders through the aisles, examining rare items. They aren't necessarily expensive, but they're unique. He finds the commander's shield, a royal gift enchanted to raise morale and rally an entire army. Arun immediately recognizes the politics behind it. The king gave them a shield rather than a sword. They were meant to protect him, not fight for themselves. His grandfather eventually understood that and stored the shield here. Then Arun finds his grandfather's actual equipment, a black shield, a kimono, and the sword Dark Sky, a narrow blade with a red and gold hilt. He reaches toward it mentally through his inventory system and notices that the storage is almost full. His left eye turns red as he checks. 763 out of 1,000 capacity. It's time to upgrade. He spends 200 coins to reach level 2, then 500 more for level 3. He almost mindlessly spends 1,200 for level 4 before stopping himself. He decides not to waste money recklessly, even if he can afford it. The upgraded inventory resembles a gloomy room with a wooden door and stone floor, leaving Arun deeply unimpressed after spending so much. He picks up Dark Sky and examines its statistics. Made from eternal dark steel over 100 days, it can't be cut even by enhanced aura and contains its master's spirit. Arun grins, confirming his suspicion that his grandfather belonged to the same system and was a dimensional traitor. Dark Sky had been with him from the beginning. Satisfied, Arun returns it. Then his expression changes. He became so distracted that he nearly forgot why he came. He begins searching for the Dimensional Trader book, thinking he must destroy it. If one of his siblings obtains it, events could unfold exactly as they did in his past life. He absolutely cannot allow that. A short while later, Arun tears through the vault like a man possessed, checking every shelf, corner, and hidden space, but finding nothing. The book of transactions has completely vanished. Growing desperate, he crouches to inspect the lower cabinets. Then he lies flat on the floor, stretches an arm beneath a shelf, and reaches for something hidden behind it, grunting as dust covers him. Finally, his fingers close around an object. For an instant, his heart leaps. Could this be it? No. It's only a black egg. Shiny, unusually heavy, and almost metallic. Sanhedrin stares at the strange egg with complete confusion, decides it isn't his problem, and shoves it back beneath the shelf. He has more important things to handle. After searching the entire vault, he accepts that the book of transactions isn't there. Honestly, that's excellent news, because it means he's the only person with access to the spatial exchange system. He enjoys the thought of having a total monopoly, but only briefly before his mind returns to another unsolved mystery. How did he travel back in time, and how did he become connected to the spatial exchange? His only clue is the bookmark of Wish, a blue-violet bookmark with an ornate talisman that he remembers seeing moments before everything went black in his previous life. He was bleeding and in unbearable pain, so the memory is blurry, but he believes he wished for another chance. He also remembers wanting to monopolize spatial trade, but the bookmark grants only one wish, not two, so something doesn't add up. He stands there trying to solve it, absently rubbing behind his ear as if that might unlock a hidden memory, then gives up. He won't solve it today. Since he's already inside the vault, Irun decides he should at least take something useful. He wanders through the shelves again, considering his choices. He passes his grandfather's legendary sword. Dark Sky catches his attention for a moment, but he shakes his head, deciding it's too valuable and attention-grabbing. He considers several magical artifacts, then decides he no longer needs any of them. Looking at a shelf of books, he wonders whether he should take his grandfather's old research notes instead. That's when the black egg reappears. It rolls out from beneath the cabinet and bumps into his foot as though it has a personal grudge. Irun stares down in disbelief. He definitely pushed it back. It has no legs, and yet it rolled toward him like a lost puppy. Then he remembers that the vault belonged to his grandfather, the greatest spatial merchant who ever lived. Strange, unexplainable objects are perfectly fitting. This time he picks up the egg with genuine curiosity and tries scanning it through the inventory system. The scan returns nothing. That immediately captures his attention. His system may only be level 1, but it can still identify most objects. A blank result means the egg comes from a higher dimension than anything he's encountered. He raises it and activates Eye of Insight. His left eye flashes red, and the instant he sees what the egg truly is, his expression completely changes. We don't see the information, but the egg has clearly become extremely important. In the next scene, Irun prepares to leave Steelguard Mansion for the Royal Academy in the capital. In his past life, this moment was practically a celebration of his departure. People whispered that they were finally free of the useless boy and laughed behind his back. 2 girls said someone like him would never change and that Steelguard was better without dead weight. He remembered walking through those hateful stares and sneers, feeling worthless and knowing nobody would miss him. This time the mood is completely different. The people seeing him off look genuinely sad and tell him to stay safe, care for himself, and visit. Irun waves with a smile, deeply moved by their concern. Only weeks ago, he was the most hated person there, yet now he's somehow become Steelguard's hope for the future. He allows himself to feel quietly proud of that transformation. His sister Karen pulls him aside while everyone else loads his belongings onto the cart. She asks whether he's happy to leave. With a warm expression, she reminds him he'll be gone for 4 entire years. He laughs and says he'll return during holidays, so it isn't a big deal. Then Karen fully embraces her role as his older sister and begins listing advice. Protect your health while traveling, wash your food properly, don't let laundry pile up, treat people politely, and remain careful. Idrun quietly nods, letting her finish. She smiles gently and admits she knows he'll be fine, but she can't stop worrying because he's the youngest. And that's what older sisters do. Then she takes his hand and places a small bag, tied with golden thread, into his palm. It's money. Idrun looks nervous and tries to refuse, saying the family already gave him a reasonable allowance. She dismisses his concern, saying she heard the money might be useful. He sincerely thanks her, but then his mind catches up and his expression stiffens. Wait a moment. His sister shouldn't have this much spare money, so where did it come from? He studies her more carefully and realizes something is missing. The ruby pendant she always wore is gone, and he suddenly understands what she did to obtain the money. Honestly, I'm beginning to question my own family situation, because apparently sisters are supposed to be this kind. Mine only eats my food and shouts at me all day, so I think I received a defective model. A few moments later, Irun sits inside the carriage, staring at the small pouch Karen gave him. He feels terrible because it's obvious she sold her ruby pendant. Logically, it wasn't an ancient family heirloom passed through generations or anything so dramatic. There is no reason it should affect him this deeply, but it does. He leans back, crosses his arms, and tries to rationalize it. He already knew how much she cared, so this shouldn't surprise him. Then he thinks about what she's currently facing. Steelguard doesn't even have a proper headmistress, so Karen essentially became one herself. She probably believed it was her responsibility as the eldest to send him off properly, even if it meant selling something precious. The thought weighs heavily on him. He exhales and thinks that the responsibility she carries should be his burden, not hers. Before becoming overwhelmed, he reminds himself that he has no time to drown in emotion and must prepare more carefully than ever. So he opens the system and checks Seo-kyun's progress with their business arrangement. The chat opens and it's already a complete disaster. Sik-kyun has transferred only 30 coins in one transaction and 22 in another. Run immediately becomes angry. He bluntly says Sik-kyun is wasting time. Sik-kyun stammers about automatic exchanges, client calls, and other excuses. But Irun becomes colder with every pathetic explanation. When Sik-kyun continues defending his poor performance, Aaron doesn't argue. He simply opens their contract and raises his share from 80% to 83%, reducing Sik-kyun's portion to only 17%. Sik-kyun winces as the change takes effect, but he can do nothing about it because the exchange center itself enforces the agreement. There are no loopholes or room for negotiation. Aaron leans back in satisfaction, reviewing the wonderful terms of their contract. Seo-kyun agreed to obey every order, keep everything secret, and surrender 80% of his profits for 100 years in exchange for protection. That's 100 years of life as a corporate slave. Lloyd would be proud of this level of exploitation. The best part is that Seo-kyun has grown accustomed to wealth and luxury, so even with only 20%, he'd never quit. He's addicted. Haroon smiles, thinking Seo-kyun is like an endless piece of candy. Then Sekun finally delivers something useful. He found the book Era wanted. It's called Evangeline's Breath, created by Evangeline, a legendary swordmaster from Earth 388-4 who supposedly conquered an entire world alone. The history is impressive. Frustrated that nearly every martial art technique was designed around the male body, she created one specifically for women. During that process, she apparently discovered something incredible, but the explanation ends there. Our boy is naturally eager to learn what she found, so he uses Eye of Insight to search for additional information. But no further data appears. He asks Sekun about it. Sekun cheerfully says anyone hoping to use the book must be at least 3rd level in cultivation. Aaron immediately snaps and asks who he's calling 3rd level. Sekun explains that anyone unable to use sword chi properly is probably around 3rd level. Aaron falls silent briefly, then tells him to shut up because his internal energy is currently level 3. Sekun nearly cries and asks whose fault that is. Aaron then asks about the technique's stability, because he doesn't need anything that will destroy his meridians. Sekun assures him that it's gentle, flexible, and unlikely to cause internal injuries, so it should be safe. Sekun adds that obtaining it was extremely difficult and required an entire network of friends and contacts. Finding anything better would be nearly impossible. Aaron asks about the other books he's still searching for. Sekun says he's waiting for sellers to respond. Aaron orders him to forward the books immediately when they arrive. Then he leaves the chat while Sekun is still trying to discuss interest rates. But Aaron is already gone. He sits holding the book, genuinely pleased. It's well written, the translation is excellent, and the technique appears perfect for his needs. He rises, walks to Karen, and presents the book with both hands. Surprised, she asks whether he bought it specifically for her and says he didn't need to. He smiles warmly and says the gift may seem random now, but there's a reason behind it. She'll understand once she reads it and begins practicing. Karen promises she will and sincerely thanks him. He watches her and thinks about her genuine talent, far greater than his natural ability ever was, even though he returned with future knowledge. He imagines her future as a unique and powerful knight. If she'd received the proper opportunity to develop her talent in the previous timeline, Steelguard might never have fallen. He can't be completely certain because becoming a truly great knight requires much more than talent. But he knows his sister won't waste a real opportunity when it's placed before her. He considers everything else he may eventually provide to help her grow stronger, including access to the system, another advanced martial art technique, or top-tier mana stones, but not yet. The timing must be perfect. He claps his hands, satisfied with the decision, then nearly walks away before remembering one final important matter. He turns toward the crowd still gathered to see him off, points 2 fingers toward his own eyes, then directs them toward Darren, giving her the universal sign that he's watching. For emphasis, he drags a finger across his throat with a serious expression, warning her not to do anything foolish while he's away. Otherwise, she'll face consequences when he returns. With that, the cavalry begins its journey. Inside the carriage, our boy reflects on how different everything is from his past life. Back then, academy life felt like a slow death. Now he has everything under control. He repaired his relationships with his family. People no longer treat him like human garbage. And he's grown so much stronger that the difference between his old and new selves will only become greater. In the middle of this dramatic reflection, he receives a message from Sokuni saying, the seller he's been tracking finally responded. Arun immediately orders him to connect the call and becomes extremely excited when it begins. He produces the pitch-black egg and examines its information. It's a Bulgasari egg containing a monster that eventually becomes pure chaos. The description is incredible. At birth, it's extremely weak and nearly useless, but it continually grows until it becomes an unstoppable force that eats metal and causes natural disasters. Yet it remains fiercely loyal to whoever raises it, making it the ultimate lifelong companion if trained properly. It's like holding a living natural disaster in one hand. Then Sokun sends information about the seller, and Arun immediately studies it. The man's name is Henry. He's an animus from System 4, a 4th-level trader, capable fighter, and owner of 418 coins. Arun immediately becomes suspicious. Why is someone from System 4 operating in Channel 1? He checks the exchange center records and quickly finds the answer. Henry is a mid-tier fighter ranked around 3,800 who has wasted all his earnings on gambling. Arun smiles because the negotiation just became much easier. He presses the call button. Henry answers shirtless, holding a strange horn as though interrupted during something unusual. He immediately acts arrogantly, saying the System 1 buyer finally appeared. Arun dismisses him and asks to see the item. Henry displays a massive guide titled something like The Tamer, more monstrous than the monsters, written by the King of Beasts and containing beast taming techniques across 666 parts. Arun wants only part 215, the section about Bulgasari, but Henry immediately refuses, saying he can't sell individual parts. He wants to sell all 14 parts together for 2,000 coins. Arun thinks the man has lost his mind if he expects 2,000 coins just to hatch one egg. He refuses to move. Henry begins an aggressive sales pitch, claiming the guide created the Emperor of Beasts and offers incredible value. Arun immediately exposes the nonsense, pointing out that the books were written after the man became emperor. That makes the argument meaningless. He offers 150 coins for part 215 alone. Henry responds that the complete 666-part collection is worth over 300,000 coins. He argues that 14 consecutive parts form a premium item, justifying the price. Arun understands. That explanation actually makes sense, but he still won't let Henry control the negotiation. So he takes an extreme approach and casually offers 100 coins for a copy of part 215. Henry completely loses his temper, shouting about the author's labor, licensing rights, and intellectual property. Arun wonders whether the man is about to suffer a stroke. Then he looks more closely and notices the copyright symbol stamped on the book. He realizes it's genuinely important. The exchange center directly manages those copyright tags. Anyone caught selling illegal copies is permanently banned and loses every coin. Arun quickly apologizes and says he didn't notice the mark. Henry complains that copyright enforcement has become extremely strict. Since copying is impossible, Arun must change his approach. He gathers himself and makes a final offer of 200 coins for part 215, with no negotiation. Henry falls silent and considers it. Arun casually closes the chat with a smug smile, knowing exactly what will happen next. As expected, Henry sends another invitation almost immediately. He asks for 250, but Arun refuses to move. Henry becomes visibly stressed, muttering that selling one part will reduce the value of the remaining set. But desperation wins, and he finally agrees to 200 coins. Arun celebrates internally because he knew Henry had no options. The man possesses only around 400 coins and came to System 1 to recover gambling losses, leaving him with no bargaining power. 3 notifications appear on Eren's screen: 180 coins spent on part 215, 27 coins returned through cashback because of some discount, and a copyright notice saying the knowledge may only be used inside the exchange center or absorbed directly. Eren immediately absorbs it and begins reading. Bulgasari begins as only a regional level threat. With proper training, it can rise to national and then continental level. In theory, a skilled trainer can even raise it to planetary destructive power. Its taming difficulty is A rank, while its specialness is S rank. Eren stares at the egg, completely stunned. He has been carrying it without understanding what it truly was. The egg catches the light and shines ominously. Eren actually recoils, because the idea of a planetary-level threat terrifies even him. A few moments later, Eren continues reading the guide. The title, King of Beasts, finally makes sense, and he congratulates himself for buying it. Then he reaches the hatching instructions and realizes this won't be as simple as cracking an egg and receiving a pet. Bulgasari is classified as an imperfect organism, meaning it requires genetic material from another creature to begin developing. That includes saliva, blood, mucus, or nearly any biological fluid, while the care instructions are horrifyingly complex. Day and night require different methods and extremely specific conditions. Nobody in System 1 could realistically manage it without losing either their mind or monster, but Eren is determined. He realizes the quality of the first genetic material will determine the creature's ultimate potential. He needs something powerful enough to make the Bulgasari truly terrifying, so his thoughts immediately turn to beasts. They exist even in the low-level systems 0 and 1, though people there call them spirits because they don't know better. He opens the catalog and finds beast parts selling rapidly, classified as human grade, earthly, heavenly, and several mysterious higher levels. Eren studies the choices but knows he could easily choose incorrectly. Then he remembers the perfect person to consult. He contacts Sukyun, who panics before Eren can finish speaking. Sukyun asks whether he's about to be forced to tame a beast. Eren tells him to calm down. He isn't foolish enough to entrust such an important task to someone without internal cultivation. Instead, he asks him to examine a file. He sends a list of beast parts he'd previously considered, all organized by combat strength. Sukyun opens it and, for once, looks impressed. He calls it a good list, then begins explaining. 10,000-year-old iron mouth turtle offers excellent blood for cultivation, but it's still only an ancient turtle. The truly dangerous options are the bloody fire dragon and 1,000-year-old bear. Eren asks which is better, so Kuni immediately chooses the bloody fire dragon. He explains that it's what an ordinary snake becomes after thousands of years of cultivation. A dragon is still a dragon, and the bear can't compare. Our boy thanks him and prepares to end the call, but Sokyun suddenly begins stammering. He awkwardly mentions buying the Evangelion's Breath book with his own money, but before finishing, Eren asks whether it hurt his wallet. Sokyun turns pale and tries to backtrack, saying that wasn't what he meant, but Eren already asks how much the book cost. Defeated, Sokyun admits it was 30 coins. He claims he was rushed and had no time to negotiate. Ren narrows his eyes and asks whether he's lying, since he already checked the price with stream recognition. Seo-kyun sighs and admits lying is pointless because Ren will discover the truth and refuse to buy the book anyway. Feeling generous, Ren opens their contract and restores Seo-kyun's previous percentage as a reward for honesty. He smiles and asks whether they're satisfied. Seo-kyun quietly agrees while internally screaming because he knows he was manipulated. Ren says he'll call if he needs anything else and adds that Saki-yoon will face a penalty if he doesn't answer within 10 minutes. Saki-yoon accepts his fate. With the expert's advice, our boy acts immediately. He buys the bloody fire dragon blood and stands holding the bottle in one hand and the egg in the other. He looks between them and wonders whether it will work after the egg spent about 10 years in storage. He decides to try and drips blood onto the egg. It hisses and evaporates instantly, like water striking a burning pan. Then the egg begins glowing with deep scarlet light, and Aaron's expression brightens. It worked. He's amazed that the egg survived years inside his grandfather's dusty vault. He wonders who his grandfather traded with to obtain something this extraordinary from System 4. But he has no answer, so he sets the mystery aside. A soft chirping sound comes from the egg. Aaron tenses briefly, then relaxes when everything settles. He feared the egg might reject the blood and die, but it appears to accept the premium dragon blood. Now he can only wait. Time passes quietly as the carriage travels beside a beautiful lake with mountains in the distance. The atmosphere is peaceful. Our boy decides to use the downtime for cultivation. He begins training, but then the egg moves. Cracks spread across its shell as smoke escapes. Our Ren leans forward in excitement, imagining the terrifying planetary-level beast, the legendary living disaster, fearsome Bulgasari of System 4, emerging to unleash destruction. Instead, the tiniest, most wide-eyed creature imaginable appears. Our boy screams internally at how adorable it is. Then he suddenly wonders why it hatched so quickly. But those large, innocent eyes stare up at him, and he decides, who cares, it's unbelievably cute. A few moments later, Arun finishes admiring his adorable new weapon. Now it's time to handle the practical work. He draws his sword and cuts open his palm without hesitation, letting the blood flow. Then he offers his hand to Sari like a meal. According to the guide, Bulgasari lack mammary glands, so mothers feed their young with blood. If the creature becomes accustomed to your blood early, it recognizes the taste, bonds for life, and loses much of its natural desire to kill. Its aggression decreases greatly, making it easier to control over time. The small creature drinks enthusiastically, perhaps too enthusiastically. Arun watches calmly at first, then realizes the tiny menace is consuming a disturbing amount of blood. He tells it that's enough. He grabs it by the scruff and pulls it away, thinking he needs a more sustainable feeding method before. The adorable creature accidentally kills him through blood loss, which would be an embarrassing death. Once things calm down, he uses almost no thought and follows the brilliant logic. You're a Bulgasari, so how about Sari? The pet squeaks in obvious disapproval, as if it has been named dog, but it's stuck with the name. Soon it's time for the cavalry to rest. They stop to eat and stretch, and Javis approaches our boy. He immediately notices the bandaged hand and becomes concerned. He asks what happened. Arun dismisses it and claims he became bored in the carriage and accidentally cut himself while handling his sword. Javis stares flatly and says he doesn't believe that excuse. After witnessing Arun's combat ability, there's no chance someone that skilled accidentally injured himself. Irun looks away awkwardly and admits internally that he needs better lies. Javis grips his sword hilt seriously and tells Irun to be more careful. Keeping him alive is his only responsibility, and he doesn't want to fail. He adds that the group will eat, then continue traveling until sunset. As they return toward the carriage, something moves in the nearby bushes. Javis instantly reaches for his sword, ready to face whatever emerges. But Arun places a hand over his and stops him. Arun calmly says everything is fine. Javis looks at him as though he's insane. Then Surt springs from the bushes like a gazelle and leaps into Arun's arms, answering the unspoken question. Javis studies the small creature and guesses that it's some kind of weasel. Arun protectively covers Sari's head with his uninjured hand and says it's his pet. Javis asks when Arun got a pet. Arun casually says he's had it for some time. Then he asks how Javis failed to notice while spying on him, suggesting someone neglected his job. Javis sputters, completely caught off guard. Iran introduces them properly and tells Sari to greet the green-haired man. Sari looks up at Javis with large, curious, innocent eyes. Javis visibly softens at the adorable sight. He reaches out to pet it, expecting a wholesome moment. The instant his hand touches Sari's head, the creature's expression becomes pure contempt, as though Javis insulted its bloodline. Javis immediately withdraws his hand, assuming the animal hates him without reason. Irun calmly points out that Sari just watched him nearly draw a sword against Irun. So Javis is responsible for making a terrible first impression. Javis raises his hands in surrender and says he understands, then walks away to get food, properly humbled. Meanwhile, Sari's eyes burn with anger. The little creature was ready to fight and protect its biological father. Irun raises his hand and Sari places its tiny front paws against it as they look at each other. Iran thinks losing blood was completely worth creating this bond. The carriage continues through mountain passes and green forests, following the coastal road ahead. Iran sits with crossed arms, reviewing everything from the Emperor's Guide. Bulgasari's potential depends directly on what it consumes during hatching and early growth. The dragon blood already completed the first critical stage and gave Sari a powerful foundation. The next stage requires a proper elixir. He's already preparing mentally because such items are extremely expensive. He looks over to check Sari and freezes. The little menace is happily chewing a bamboo life pill. It's the rare pill personally gifted by the mountain bamboo sect leader, worth 150 coins, which Irun had saved for the perfect moment. He stares in silent despair as his investment is eaten. He slumps with his head in one hand, defeated, and accepts that he'll need to work hard to recover the loss. He checks the schedule. There are 53 days until the monthly trading limit resets, and he needs to choose his next product immediately. Options fill his mind as he calculates what could sell across several systems while remaining balanced and profitable. The base value must be high enough to justify the effort with genuine profit margins. He performs calculations like he's preparing a business proposal. Then inspiration strikes. His eyes widen and he sits upright. With absolute confidence, he thinks, I've solved it. Our boy Run has discovered the ultimate money-making exploit. He realizes he can resell internal cultivation equipment for 250 coins each, and his VIP benefits would increase the profit further. He begins imagining himself swimming through gold coins like Scrooge McDuck. Laughing, he pictures earning thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, with ease. Then reality strikes. The exchange imposes a 500-day resale restriction, meaning he must wait more than a year before repeating the strategy. His excitement instantly disappears. But just as he's ready to give up, an achievement appears. King of Gold. Suddenly, he's back in business. What does our boy do with the coins? He begins an enormous shopping spree. He buys elixirs and random items as though it's Black Friday. He's especially excited because the elixirs have no sales restrictions. He begins planning his next profit scheme before completing the current one. After the trading frenzy, Arun turns toward his pet and feeds it colorful elixirs like rare candies from Pokemon. Sparks shoot from the creature's eyes, while Arun watches as though witnessing heaven. He examines the pet's fangs, checks inside its mouth like a dentist, and confirms everything is developing correctly. Once these creatures reach a certain stage, their fur and fangs fully develop, and they're no longer babies. His boy Basara has reached that point. Arun is relieved that he can stop spending so many elixirs. He calculates where the coins went. Roughly 1/3 on the pet and another third reinvested into future trades. The remainder was spent on cultivation items and general supplies. Then he produces a blue paper containing healing magic called the second circle of daytime healing magic. He tears it apart with a broad grin. Blue light bursts above him, and magic swirls through the air. He closes his eyes and absorbs the effect. He says chi breathing benefits the soul, but nothing surpasses this for improving one's appearance. Apparently, he was the center of every party in his past life. He touches his face and admits that looks matter. This time, he's embracing his full pretty boy potential. Then he's informed that they're still half a day from their destination. He orders the group to continue and rest after arrival. They reach Acadio as the sun sets. Irun's party arrives before a huge 3-story mansion, leaving everyone staring in disbelief. Irun looks completely satisfied. Beside him, Javis begins mentioning a hotel, but our boy immediately interrupts. He says everyone needs proper rest and good care. Then he tosses Javis a bag containing 200 coins in broad daylight. He orders hot baths and good food for the group, with a generous tip included, because his people deserve comfort after traveling so far. Javis is genuinely shocked and says it's far more than necessary. But Irun smiles and says they aren't here to waste time. He asks where the meeting will occur. The green-haired man points toward the castle walls, saying he left a mark and they'll receive a response when someone sees it. Irun crosses his arms and says they'll wait. That night, the crew completely loses control. At a tavern, drinking, shouting, and feasting. Irun and the green-haired captain sit separately, watching everyone celebrate. Some men try to drag the captain into the drinking, but Arun stares directly at him and threatens to kill him if he drinks even one glass. The captain turns pale, dramatically presses a fist to his chest, and tells the men that 1 drink becomes 2, and 2 becomes 3, so they won't fool him. The disappointed crew walks away. Then a woman carrying drinks accidentally bumps into the captain and apologizes. He tells her to be careful, then sits again. As he settles down, Arun casually asks whether he still has the item. Javis sips water and asks who Arun thinks he is. He was only surprised because nobody had ever bumped into him so deliberately before. Night falls, and Arun and Javis move through the back alleys. Javis unfolds a map and explains how the city is divided into sections, pointing to a T marking Trevor's location. Arun asks whether the plan will truly work. Javis responds casually, saying everything is arranged because he's worked with Trevor before. He can leave immediately and handle it alone. Arun asks whether he's really going alone. Javis explains the rules of the streets. Too many people are watching, and traveling together would attract suspicion. Iran understands the logic, but logic and trust are entirely different. Traveling together has made them closer, but closeness doesn't automatically create trust. So Iran unexpectedly demands an immediate progress report. Javis looks genuinely surprised and asks whether Iran still distrusts him. Iran doesn't hesitate. He bluntly says there is no trust between them, and that's simply reality. But Javis proves he isn't an emotional amateur. Instead of becoming offended, he raises his hands and says Iran can examine the report personally if he needs proof. Iran pauses to process this, then asks whether Javis is offended. Javis honestly says he understands his position in their relationship. He isn't foolish enough to act recklessly. Then he says his own life matters to him, and he won't throw it away over suspicions from the past. Iran silently returns the report and tells him to leave. Javis bows professionally and disappears into the city. Left alone, Iran reflects that no matter how trustworthy someone appears, you can never fully know their thoughts. So Iran produces a scroll tied with red ribbon, tears it open and activates invisibility. It's third circle transparency magic, which sounds more impressive than it likely is. Magic swirls dramatically around his arm, and then He completely disappears. He studies his invisible hand and thinks it works even better than expected, then wonders what will happen if he combines it with Light Body. Together, the abilities turn our boy into something like a ghost. He crosses rooftops above the streets, leaping between buildings, and gliding over the people below. Nobody beneath the glowing windows realizes he's there. At one point, he crouches on a rooftop simply to admire the city at night because the view is probably incredible. From above, he spots Javis below. Even at that distance, he can tell the man is experienced. Javis doesn't rush or behave suspiciously, but moves naturally through the crowd and blends in perfectly. Arun's sharp eyes also notice 3 men in matching uniforms following Javis from a distance. He smiles, glad he didn't accompany him because that would have caused trouble. Javis eventually reaches a house with every window brightly lit, as though a party is underway. He knocks using what appears to be a coded pattern. Soon a man steps outside, nervously checks the surroundings, and quickly allows him inside. Meanwhile, Irun is already on the roof of that same house, watching everything. He considers activating another ability, something called 100-step perception, which seems to allow hearing from great distances, and decides to use it. At first, he hears only painfully boring small talk with nothing useful. Then, the real conversation begins, completely different from the polite greetings. Inside the house, beside a crackling fireplace, Javis stands face to face with Trevor. Trevor is genuinely surprised to see him and asks why he came to the city. Javis reveals that Gilbert is dead. Trevor's expression changes as he asks how it happened. Javis calmly asks whether Trevor believes it was illness or an accident, an unusual response to the question. Trevor grips his head with both hands while processing the news. After regaining control, he asks how Javis is handling it. Javis says Gilbert once saved his life. Trevor falls silent, crosses his arms, and says Gilbert must have kept everything secret until the end. Then Trevor suddenly realizes something, and his entire expression changes. He points out that the academy is in the capital, nowhere near this city, so why is Javis actually here? Trevor locks eyes with Javis and waits for a mistake. His 2 men mirror his tension, glaring at Javis as though ready to attack. On the roof, Aaron sweats, wondering whether the operation has already failed. But Javis doesn't even blink and remains perfectly calm. Then he stares at Trevor and asks in a flat voice whether he's enjoying himself. Just like that, the tense atmosphere disappears. Trevor bursts into laughter, raises his hands, and says he was only joking. He admits Gilbert's death is unfortunate, but says that's the nature of their work. Mourning everyone who dies would make the job impossible. On the roof, Aaron finally relaxes, relieved they weren't exposed. Trevor leans over the table and asks how Javis arrived unnoticed, since the journey took longer than expected. Javis explains that he used Arun as cover, saying he first visited Akadio, and the fool agreed immediately without asking questions. Arun's expression twists as he hears himself described as a disposable, gullible idiot who was embarrassingly easy to manipulate. He forces a smile through clenched teeth and wonders why Javis sounds like he genuinely means it. Javis slides a folded document across the table and says it must be encrypted before reaching the Empire. Trevor smiles and asks whether there's anything else. Javis says no, turns around and confidently walks away. From the roof, Arun watches him leave and silently admits that Javis passed Trevor's test perfectly. But before Arun can leave, one of Trevor's men speaks. He says it's suspicious that the agent survived while the messenger died. Arun's heart jumps as he wonders whether they've discovered the truth. But Trevor immediately dismisses the concern and asks whether they truly believe Javis would betray them. The brown-haired man shrugs and says Javis was demoted, so anything is possible. Trevor firmly says Javis isn't the type to betray anyone. He values his family above everything and would die before endangering them. The suspicious man sighs and says you can never truly know someone. Trevor points at him, orders him to stop, and tells everyone to return to work. The higher-ups will decide what happens, while their duty is only to pass along the information. Iron watches Javis disappear into the darkness and concludes that the man has a personal motive behind everything he does. Iron heads back. As the invisibility spell fades, his body glows red before fully reappearing. He studies his palm with a grin, thinking invisibility combined with 100-step perception was worth every coin. He'll definitely abuse the combination again. Feeling pleased, he walks along the stone road until loud shouting suddenly interrupts him. Someone yells that people don't respect hierarchy, while another person screams at them to shut up. Ryrun turned toward the commotion and spotted a crowd brawling in the shadows. A group of furious men faced off against several knights, enraged that some lowly knight dared talk back to them. The dark-haired knight fired back that his master was the Marquess, not whoever the hell was barking orders at him. Then Run's stomach dropped. He recognized those voices. His men were completely drunk and caught in the middle of a street fight. One knight puffed out his chest and declared that without Steel Guard, the Marquess wouldn't even exist. Rune froze at that name. His expression darkened. Steel Guard meant Marquess Albert. The other side completely lost control, with one man shouting that he was done reasoning with insane northerners and would teach this village slave what dignity meant. The knight stepped forward and rallied his companions to defend Steel Guard's honor. Both sides charged, but a booming voice sliced through the chaos, freezing everyone in mid-swing. A furious-looking man stood there in a blue uniform and red cape, with a sword strapped to his waist. Someone in the crowd gasped that it was the second captain. Iran's hands began trembling, and his teeth clenched hard enough to crack. Just seeing this bastard sent his entire body into fight-or-flight mode. He squeezed his eyes shut, but couldn't stop the memories of his last life, strapped to a chair and screaming until his throat bled. A room filled with torture instruments. A pool of his own blood beneath him. His clothes soaked red, with his head hanging limply like a broken doll. And the man responsible for all of it was this ugly bastard. So the moment our boy saw him, his first thought was murder. He came dangerously close to killing the man right there, but stopped himself, thinking, why give him such an easy death? He wanted this bastard to suffer slowly later. Before anything could happen, Erica walked toward the two fools who had started the entire mess. The moment the soldiers saw him approaching, they froze. Derica stepped directly into their faces and asked, "Didn't I just tell you idiots not to cause a scene?" They immediately bowed and apologized as though their lives depended on it, which they probably did. Then Derica turned toward the Steel Guard knight, narrowed his eyes, and demanded to know where he came from and what Steel Guard was doing in Acadio territory. The knight began sweating and stammering, but before he could say more than 2 words, Irun stepped forward and said he would handle the situation. Everyone in the crowd, Albert's men, the knights, and random bystanders turned toward him. They were surprised because our boy had infused his voice with internal energy. Our boy approached calmly and confidently, then introduced himself by his full name. Ira quickly considered the situation. A member of the Steel Guard family being present meant he was dealing with someone far more important. Iran casually explained that they had stopped in Acadio on the way to the academy because he wanted to visit the second city. Then he smoothly turned the question around and asked why the Alberts were there. Dira stepped forward and offered essentially the same explanation, then immediately apologized for the earlier disturbance and tried to calm the situation. But Albert, being an absolute idiot, interrupted, indignantly pointing at Steel Guard. He asked why Dira was apologizing when they had started it. The instant Albert spoke, Derica looked spiritually exhausted. Knowing the spoiled brat had spent his life abusing his family's Marquess title without consequences, but he couldn't wave that title at Steel Guard and expect them to retreat without consequences. Derica tried saving the disaster by suggesting everyone sleep on it and settle the matter calmly in the morning. Arun refused to accept that. With perfect sarcasm, He asked whether anyone actually knew what happened, since they had only just arrived. Albert dismissed him and said it didn't matter because he outranked him. A baron stood below a marquess in the hierarchy. The Steel Guard knights immediately stiffened at the disrespect, but Arun only smiled, lowered his head and laughed quietly. Then he looked up with frightening calmness and told Albert he was speaking complete nonsense. Albert's face turned red. He pointed at Arun and demanded an apology. Arun calmly agreed to apologize if he was actually wrong. Then he turned to one of Albert's own men and asked him to explain what had happened. The soldier began sweating and reluctantly admitted that Steel Guard shouted first, causing the argument to become a fight. Albert immediately seized on that and ordered Arun to kneel and apologize. But Arun quickly silenced him, telling him to relax, like a tantrum-throwing child, and saying both sides must be heard first. He turned to the Steel Guard knight named Michel and asked whether that version was accurate. Michael lowered his head and admitted that they had technically started it, but he explained that Albert's men had mocked them first, asking how long they intended to keep riding Liz's coattails and claiming that past accomplishments didn't make them relevant today. Michael apologized to Arun for causing a scene, but made it clear he didn't regret defending their honor. He shouted that no worthy Steel Guard knight would quietly endure such disrespect. Arun remained silent for a moment, considering everything. Then he called to the man from Albert's side and asked whether that part was true. The man immediately backtracked and stumbled over his words, claiming they hadn't said exactly that. Derek stared at him as though she wanted to strangle him, thinking the idiot was making everything worse. Arun noticed the entire exchange and nodded as if to say, "That's what I thought." Then he turned back to Michel and told him to raise his head before everyone. He openly praised him for acting with honor. Michel and the other Steel Guard knights gazed at their young master with emotional, nearly tearful expressions, ready to die for him. Then Arun removed the cloak from his shoulder, revealing the black shield crest on his shirt. He said that as a member of the family that inherited the Heart of Steel, he would never let this disrespect pass. Albert, Derica, and everyone else froze while staring at the crest. The Steel Guard family wasn't some insignificant noble house to mock at a dinner party. They had protected Navarro for generations. So our boy wouldn't let a pampered rich kid insult their legacy. Besides, he had a personal grudge against this bastard. They would fight for anyone who still respected them and spill blood against anyone who dared ridicule them. He stared directly into Derica's and Albert's eyes, then bluntly asked his own knights whether they truly believed Steel Guard was worthless. Derica and Albert stood frozen with grim expressions. Derica panicked internally because Euron was Albert's age, yet spoke like someone who had ruled kingdoms for decades. Derica had expected Euron to behave like a typical noble child, invoking his grandfather, repeating rehearsed politics, or throwing a tantrum. Instead, the boy held his ground with the confidence of a veteran commander. Derek began sweating as he realized the anger wasn't empty. It was supported by one of the most powerful families in the realm. He thought, this is true Steel Guard blood. Meanwhile, Albert ground his teeth and silently cursed, a run in every language he knew. The instant Derek noticed his master's expression, he knew the situation would explode unless he acted quickly. So what did this absolute genius do? He turned toward his own knights and brutally punished them without mercy. He began beating his own men, punching one directly in the face and dropping him. Then another struck the ground. We watched the spectacle while everyone else stared in complete shock. Derica continued until every knight lay groaning on the ground, then accused them of disgracing Lord Albert's name. The swollen-faced knights looked pathetic as they begged for forgiveness. With a cold expression, Derica told them to apologize to Kunz, not him. He berated them for starting the entire conflict and humiliating the Marquess before everyone. The terrified knights immediately bowed and loudly apologized to Albert, who stood with crossed arms and an irritated expression. Meanwhile, Aaron watched Derica and realized the man was quite clever. He had completely reframed the situation. Instead of Albert being responsible for disrespectful subordinates, it became a dispute caused by low-ranking knights. By forcing them to apologize, Dereka made the conflict appear limited to the lower ranks rather than the noble houses. Arun realized Dereka had backed down without completely sacrificing his own reputation. So he made a mental note to watch this clever bastard closely. Albert had endured enough humiliation and stormed away, declaring he was going to bed. Arun smirked, thinking he hadn't gotten everything he wanted, then casually said he accepted Marquis Lebray's apology. The instant he said it, Albert froze mid-step. The Marquess spun around, face red with rage and veins bulging across his forehead. Arun merely stood there wearing the most smug and confident smile imaginable. Albert was too furious to form a sentence. He turned again and stormed away. While everyone watched silently, Dereka bowed respectfully and followed his master, with the knights scrambling behind him. Just then, Javis arrived and noticed the tense atmosphere. Nervously, he asked whether he had missed something important. Nobody answered. They slowly turned and glared at him. Faced with those murderous looks, he immediately began apologizing, as though his life depended on it. He said he had no idea what he'd done, but was extremely sorry. The next day, Albert aggressively cut his meat during breakfast. While asking Dereka about Aaron's reputation, Dereka confirmed that Aaron was known as the worst of Steelguard's sons, completely unlike his father and brothers. Apparently, he was a total disappointment. Albert complained that rumors were meaningless because nobody had seen Aaron fight, so why fear a sharp-tongued child? He openly admitted disliking Aaron and asked why Dereka had forced the knights to apologize. Dereka explained that retreating was the smart decision because people still feared the Steel Guard name. Pressuring Aaron further could have made the entire situation explode. Albert reluctantly accepted the logic, but vowed to punish Aaron for humiliating him. Nobody disrespected him and escaped. Then Albert noticed he hadn't seen any Steel Guard members and asked where they had gone. Dereka said they departed extremely early, around dawn. He had offered to travel together since both groups were heading to the capital, but Steel Guard said they couldn't risk being late and left. Albert became annoyed and asked why Dereka offered something without permission, making it seem as though they wanted to travel together. Dereka calmly replied that increasing their numbers made sense because protecting Albert was the highest priority. Albert found that incredibly arrogant, put down his fork, and said he had finished eating. Later that night, Albert slept deeply in his room, snoring with his limbs spread out like a starfish. The room had 2 large uncovered windows, and one of them quietly creaked open. Albert continued sleeping with his mouth open, completely unaware, until a hand suddenly clamped over his face. He panicked and made muffled sounds, and when he opened his eyes, he saw Aaron looming above him in the darkness, wearing a completely unhinged expression. While covering the Marquess's mouth, Aaron pressed a finger to his lips as Albert suffered a full panic attack, wondering how the man entered his room. Feeling Aaron's grip, he wondered how this skinny bastard possessed so much strength. Aaron smiled creepily and said he'd been imagining the perfect revenge, wanting to savor it and slowly break Albert apart. But the moment he saw Albert's face, filled with pure envy and hatred, he changed his mind. Looking at him now, Aaron realized Albert hadn't changed at all from their past life. He remained the same pathetic, jealous bastard. Flashbacks show Albert seated on his throne, surrounded by knights, while Aaron remembers him attacking Steel Guard and trying to steal everything they owned. Back in the present, Aaron stares at Albert with madness in his eyes and casually announces that he'll die tonight. In the flashback, the past Aaron held 2 swords against the knights blocking him and demanded to know why Albert was doing this. He genuinely couldn't understand what he had done to deserve it, but Albert only grinned and asked whether Aaron truly didn't understand. Sitting on his throne, he confessed that he'd hated Aaron since their first meeting. Aaron froze when Albert revealed the absurd reason. He simply hated Aaron's name. Aaron stared at the fool and asked whether that was truly why he destroyed their lands and stole everything. Albert replied that Aaron was no better than him. Narrowing his eyes, he ranted that despite his own talent and mastery of techniques, Aaron received smiles and respect everywhere simply because of his appearance and reputation. Albert's eyes became crazed as he grinned and said there was nothing special about Aaron, who was broken and pathetic. Aaron silently endured as Albert called him a failed lord with no land, power, or possessions. The Marquess proudly spread his arms and declared himself the great Marquess Albert, then arrogantly announced that he'd finally won. This man destroyed an entire family because he envied Aaron's name. Back in the present, Aaron sits on Albert's bed with one hand covering his mouth. Albert keeps struggling and making muffled sounds, desperately wondering what this madman wants. Haroon stares with wide, crazed eyes while Albert finally realizes he's completely serious about killing him. With trembling hands, Albert grabs Aaron's wrist. Haroon grins and removes his hand from Albert's mouth. The Marquess opens his mouth and screams for Durica, but no sound emerges. He freezes in horror, sweating heavily and wondering what happened to his voice. Haroon casually waves his hand and explains with a smile that these are pressure points. When pressed correctly, they prevent someone from speaking. Albert presses his lips together as blood vessels burst in his terrified eyes, realizing he can't make a sound until someone releases the pressure point. Albert watches as Haroon says, "Unfortunately," then smiles madly and adds that he can't simply murder him and hang his face in a frame. Albert trembles in fear, trying to understand how this happened when guards surrounded his room. Durica was right next door, so how had nobody noticed? Then an idea suddenly strikes him. He grabs the blanket and throws it over Aaron's face. Albert leaps from the bed and races toward the door, thinking he only needs to open it and shout. But Aaron instantly appears beside him and drives a knee into his stomach. Albert coughs violently as saliva spills from his mouth. Aaron watches with cold, cruel eyes, then raises his leg while Albert winces and falls to his knees. He pathetically crawls toward the exit, while Aaron watches him like an insect. Albert jerks and freezes when 3 precise strikes hit points on his back and neck. Arunti stands with a slight smile and 3 fingers extended as though casting a jutsu. Albert feels trapped in thick quicksand and realizes in horror that his body won't move. Haroon approaches, grabs his collar, and politely tells him to stay still and avoid unnecessary trouble. Looking down at the pathetic man, he promises a quick, painless death if Albert behaves. Albert stares gloomily, unable to process what is happening. Haroon drags him across the floor toward the desk, then throws him onto a chair. Albert's mouth falls open as several more precise strikes hit his back. Suddenly, he can move again. He waves his right hand experimentally, then stares in surprise when Haroon places blank paper before him and orders him to write. Albert glares defiantly, but Haroon calmly tells him to pick up the pen. Albert refuses internally, thinking Aaron will obviously kill him after he finishes writing, so cooperation is pointless. But the moment Aaron notices the hesitation, he draws his sword and cuts off both of Albert's hands. That makes him eligible for disabled parking. Then Aaron calmly repeats his order to pick up the pen. Once the shock fades, Albert collapses, clutches his stump, and begins sobbing and screaming. Aaron asks why he's still making things difficult after being warned. Albert raises tear-filled, hateful eyes. When Aaron brings the sword closer, Albert recoils. White magical energy begins glowing around the blade, and Albert's jaw drops. He thought Aaron was merely insane, but now realizes the lunatic can also use aura. Aaron loses patience and raises his sword to cut off Albert's right foot, but the terrified man lifts his hand. He struggles upright and drags over a wooden chair. Sitting down, he grips the pen with his remaining hand and asks in a broken voice what he should write. Haroon lowers his sword and coldly orders him not to stain the paper with blood. Disgustedly, he warns that Albert will lose his head if even one drop touches it. Standing over him with the sword, Haroon dictates a letter supposedly written by Albert to his father. Albert writes while the pen scratches across the page through his tear-blurred vision. He consoles himself by thinking he can obtain a prosthetic arm and have servants manage everything else. With tears streaming and teeth clenched, he decides survival is all that matters. Then he remembers making noise when his hand was severed. Derica should have noticed something was wrong by now. The pen continues scratching while Arun stands behind him. Albert panics internally, wondering why nothing is happening. Gritting his teeth, he wonders what the hell Derica is doing. Then he reaches the final sentence and nervously looks up at Arun. He decides to stall by making an error or spilling ink. Suddenly, Arun's face appears beside his, wearing an insane smile as he whispers that he's been reading Albert's thoughts from the start. Why is he trying to waste time? Albert's face turns ghostly white. Arun orders him to finish the final sentence. Albert's hand begins moving again as though compelled. Arun takes the completed letter with a satisfied smile and tells Albert he did well. Meanwhile, Albert panics because he won't survive much longer while losing so much blood. Derica must understand something is wrong by now. Then Arun casually taps Kunz's throat. Albert touches his throat and coughs, his eyes widening when his voice returns. Arun twirls his sword and cheerfully asks what's wrong, reminding him that he can speak now. Albert releases his throat and nervously clenches his teeth as veins bulge across his forehead. He jumps up and screams for Derica, shouting that an intruder is inside the room. Grinning, Arun tilts his head and asks whether that's really the best Albert could think of at death's door. Albert stares in confusion as Arun encourages him to shout even louder. Albert can't understand why Arun remains calm. Doesn't he know the guards will kill him? Rolling his eyes, Arun asks whether Albert truly believed he hadn't planned for that. He reveals that he activated a silent scroll upon entering, preventing any sound from escaping. Albert's eyes widen, and his entire body shakes as he asks why Arun removed his voice in the first place. Picking up the letter, Arun smugly asks whether Albert would have written it without believing he had a chance to survive. The shocked noble collapses to the floor, trembling in horror and staring blankly as reality finally sinks in. Looking down at him, Arun says accepting defeat by Steel Guard must be difficult, especially knowing Albert caused it himself. Albert stammers and asks what the hell he's talking about. Raising his aura-covered sword, Arun says Albert's inferiority complex is what got him killed. Albert desperately lifts his remaining hand and begs for mercy, swearing he'll never forget this night. He clings to Arun's leg and says his family is wealthy, promising anything if Arun names a price. Arun looks down with revenge burning in his eyes and says the cold truth. You shouldn't have killed me. Tears stream down Albert's face as he screams and begs him to stop. Arun swings his sword. Albert's severed head lies apart from his blood-covered body. Arun calmly sheathes his sword and says that was honestly the best expression Albert ever made. A red flame flashes, and a small brown jar appears. It's boric acid that melts bodies on contact, perfect for concealing evidence. The yellowish liquid pours out. Arun thinks everything should appear as though Albert vanished rather than died. The body begins dissolving, while the remaining pajamas produce foul fumes as they melt. Arun smiles and thinks about handling the dead man's belongings. He opens his inventory and grabs the pajamas before they fully dissolve. Steel Guard is a full day's ride away, making an overnight return impossible and giving him a perfect alibi. He finds an impressive black and gold magical sword and thinks the Albert family may suspect him later. But his alibi is secure. He throws 4 scrolls into the air. Red energy activates invisibility. Stealth, increased speed, and reduced travel time simultaneously. Now completely invisible, he grins and vanishes from the room as though he was never there. The letter Albert was forced to write says his pathetic son finally realized he couldn't lead the Albert family. It says he plans to flee somewhere he can live freely without pressure, and asks his father not to search for him because he's leaving forever. The next morning, our boy sits inside his carriage, staring through the window. He achieved his revenge, so why does he feel so disoriented? He expected victory and satisfaction, but feels nothing close to happiness. Now he questions whether he rushed it and wonders if more careful planning would have made it feel better. But he dismisses the thought. No, that was the perfect opportunity. He wouldn't have another chance for a long time, so he must stop thinking about that idiot. His thoughts return to his past life. The truth is, Kun's wasn't the reason Steelguard fell. Their true downfall began with his father's disappearance. Suddenly, he slaps his own cheek and snaps back to reality. His eyes sharpen with determination as he thinks, now is the perfect time to like the video, support more juicy content, and activate that cheeky little bell. And I'm out.